Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. With Dave Minuk, with Ezra Ginsburg, I am your host, Drew Mindell. We're here to talk about the Winnipeg Jets, mired in a 6-game losing streak. Mr. Ginsburg is still bearded. My God, the guy needs to shave more, as bad as anything has happened, and yet it just keeps growing bigger and bigger and bigger, much like the fire behind Dave Minuk's head. Gentlemen, good to see you this morning. Dave, it's been a whopping 11 hours since you and I last spent some time together. Ezzy, it's been a little longer than that, but nice to see you both on this Saturday morning.
Yeah, nice to see you guys. I was going to hold off on this. But I actually am going to tell you guys now, I guess tell everybody now, I'm so confident that the Jets are going to break their losing streak. I found someone that will cut your hair, that will come to your house and cut your hair. And I have a scheduled haircut at 8 o'clock on Monday, right as the Jets game is going to be wrapping up. So that's how confident I am that the Jets are going to win that game and break the losing streak. So the beard's coming off. I'm getting a haircut on Monday because I know that the Jets are going to win.
So will this be happening during the post-game show?
The haircut's at 8 o'clock, so it should be okay. Like the game's going to end around 8:30, so it'll be perfect timing because the game's at 6 o'clock on Monday.
That's true. And so if the person's coming at 8 o'clock, I'm calling public health to report a public health violation for about 8:15. So we should be perfectly on schedule at that point in time to see Ezzy being handcuffed and led out of his home. I think that'll
No, it's perfectly fine. Haircuts are allowed. Everything's by the law. Shout out to Dr. Brent Rusin and Dr. Jazz Atwell.
Hey, anybody else? You got on your doctor front?
I'm good.
Okay, there you go. Anyways, good morning,
Josh
everybody.
Reimer, maybe.
Yeah, nice to see so many of you in the chat on this Saturday morning. A fired up bunch of Winnipeg Jets fans. Certainly, they were fired up last night in the post-game show, as Dave and I both know, and I'm fairly confident that they're not any less fired up this morning as we get started with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. You know, Dave, we talked about it, 11 hours ago, as I mentioned, that this Winnipeg Jets team is just bereft of answers right now.
Yep.
Twice last night they lose
bereft,
2 goal leads. Thank you. Bereft is a good word. Yep. Twice last night they lose 2 goal leads. They have really not a ton of jump to their game at any point in time last night, despite having those 2 leads. And the Montreal Canadiens, despite playing with a more depleted lineup than the Winnipeg Jets, by far a more depleted lineup, they take the victory. All of a sudden, they're only 4 points behind the Winnipeg Jets. And my main takeaway from last night's postgame was this is a team right now that simply does not have any answers for what ails them, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, it appears to be a bit of a rudderless ship right now, and that's not a good thing. And look, you have a Montreal team, and we talked about it. They hadn't been playing very good hockey. They were similar to the Jets, were 4-6-0 in their last 10 games, I believe. And prior to the last night's game, and you had a Montreal team that knew that Calgary is what 4, or at the time I think they were 4 points back of them. So I mean, you knew that Montreal was going to be bringing it, and obviously the Shea Weber news. Now, yeah, they were 4 points up on Calgary going into last night's game with the game in hand. Now they've got a 6-point buffer, which is big for them, and they lost Shea Weber. I think it was a lower body injury, like late scratch, for the Canadiens. That's a big loss for them, obviously. And so you knew this Montreal team, despite all the injuries, was going to, Carey Price, Drew, that was one of the guys we didn't mention, was injured, obviously. So you've got a number of guys.
Thomas Tatar as well, guys. Like Tatar is sixth on the team in scoring. Like, no, I know what you're saying, but like Gallagher, Tatar, Weber, Price, like these are not 4th line guys. Like these are
missing Drouin.
Exactly, Drouin. Yeah.
Yeah, like it was a lot, right? And so that was one of those things. Again, like I said, we talked about it last night on the show. I mean, there's you have a team that was playing more 5-man hockey and like a unit than the Winnipeg Jets. And to me, it was, Drew used this word quite a number of times last night on the post-game show. It was the E for effort. And to me, that's just what you're not seeing right now. Again, like I said, it's not about trying hard. It's just, again, it's every shift, giving what you can, and you just don't see it. You just don't see it. And there's that, the word I would use that you don't see right now with the Jets is that desperation. And Paul Maurice talked about it in the post game. He talked about, well, we have a good group and we're confident in this group and it's not going well for us. That's true. That is a good point. But why are we not seeing that desperation from your hockey club then? And that to me is one of the biggest factors amongst a number right now when you're mired. Again, I'm not one to say burn it all down when you've lost one game in a row, when you've lost 2 games in a row, when you even lost 3. And the reason I say that is because that isn't something that we've had to talk about throughout the course of this season. But now when you get a 6-game losing streak, which I think I saw someone tweeted us earlier this morning, that this is the first time Paul Maurice has ever had a 6-game losing streak as head coach of the Winnipeg Jets.
I think it was our buddy Joe Piscucci tweeted that.
Yeah, it was Joe Piscucci. That's right.
The Jets have lost 6 games in a row before, but they've always had some overtime losses.
That's right. Not regular
losses.
Not 6.
They haven't gone 6 games without earning a point. This is the first time in Paul Maurice's tenure as the Winnipeg Jets head coach where they've ever gone 6 straight regulation time losses.
Yeah, and so again, like I said, to me that's one of the things that you need to see. Again, like I said, if you lose, but you're giving it your all, and you're seeing a complete game as best you can do, and you're like, okay, well, we're without and again, like I said, I understand their special teams are hampered right now because you've lost. It's funny because you've lost Adam Lowry on your PK, and now you've given up four PK goals in the last 2 games. And your power play, let's be realistic, guys, that the power play 2 unit has been, fire as opposed to the PP1. They've been as good, at least in terms of producing, and you lose Nikolai Ehlers. So your power play, the power play looked like slow. Slow, predictable. Those are all the words we used last night on the show. And so there's things that need to be changed. And again, like I said, if it's just tweaking your personnel, but as one of the things we talked about last night is this idea you just can't keep trying the same thing over and over and over again and hoping for a different outcome.
I agree 100%. And, Dave mentioned effort and desperation. And there's no doubt, just look at, what was it? Was it the Nick Suzuki goal? Yeah, it was the Nick Suzuki goal, the first goal that Montreal scored. I had to write these goals down. And, Kyle Connor just isn't hard enough on Suzuki, right? Like, I realized that, a lot of the focus was Neil Pionk not being able to handle that rim around, Dave. Mm-hmm. But, Connor's got to be harder on that puck. We don't want to be singling out individual players. Kyle Connor is a top 10 goal scorer, guys. Everybody knows that. But when you've lost 5 games in a row and you've got a 2-0 lead, you got to be harder on that puck. I realize, Pionk, it's a bad bounce and everything like that. But what stands out to me is the effort by Connor on that goal, not Pionk's inability to handle that rim around. So I agree with you. And, guys, we've been covering this team since they came over from Atlanta, and I haven't felt a vibe around this team since 2013-14. What happened that year? That's when Paul Maurice took over for Claude Noel. When you watch these guys on the ice and you watch them post-game, pre-game, they seem like they're almost defeated before they even step on the ice. And that's not something that we've seen for a long time with this Jets team. And it's not just it's not just Blake Wheeler. It's not just, 1 or 2 players. There's a stinky vibe around this team right now. And they, like Drew mentioned, that they don't seem to have any answers. Well, you better find some answers here. You've only got 6 games left, and you could probably lose all 6 games and still get into the playoffs. There's a very small chance that Calgary would get in. But let's be honest, guys, they're either finishing 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. And the way they're playing right now, it's most likely going to be 3rd or 4th. So they have to figure this out. There's no option. If they don't figure it out, they're going to get swept in the first round.
You don't just turn it on. And I know there's people saying, some really glass half full people, and and I don't know really, they wear some.
What's their
really
glass half full of?
Well, I think vodka, based on some of their answers, and their rose-colored glasses are very rose-colored. That say, they'll get back to it when the games matter. They'll get back to it when the playoffs start and they find their game again. That's not how it works at this stage of the season. If you lose 12 in a row, or you lose, you're up to 6 right now. So it's certainly not inconceivable that your losing streak increases beyond that. If you lose 10 out of your final 12 games in the regular season, it's not flipping a switch. It's not getting right back into it that you're all of a sudden going to be the juggernaut that was, 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago. They are struggling right now, and the core of the team, the best players on the team are the ones who are struggling the most. Mm-hmm. And that's really, I think, what is as problematic as anything. Look, Trevor Lewis had 2 goals last night. Jansen Harkins played well. Christian Vesalainen played fine. I mean, those guys are not the core of the team. The guys who were invisible last night were Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler. Kyle Connor has been awful for this 6-game losing streak.
What did Pierre-Luc Dubois do yesterday?
Pierre-Luc Dubois wasn't anything to write home about yesterday. It's the best players on this team, the ones who need to be your best players, the ones who need to carry the team on their back to get you out of this losing streak, are not doing it. They're just not doing it. Trevor Lewis had 2 goals. Paul Stastny had a very nice goal to give the Jets the lead. It's the core of the team that needs to now figure out how they're going to change the narrative right now and get back into winning ways for this Winnipeg Jets team. And it starts with the right effort. That's really where the problem has been, is that the effort has not been right for much of this 6-game losing streak.
You know what though? It is effort. We've talked about that already, but it's more than effort. It's how you're executing, and it's also, I think, psychological at this point. Like I said earlier, guys, we followed this team year after year after year. And you mentioned, Drew, 6 weeks ago, 4 to 6 weeks ago, whatever it was, when the Jets were right behind the Leafs, right?
Yeah, 2 points.
Yeah. And so, I mean, the Jets not only were comfortably in a playoff spot, they really had an opportunity to usurp the Leafs for first place. How do you like that word, Drew? Usurp is a great word as well.
Very good.
And now
somebody's been reading their Oxford English dictionary in their spare time.
Yeah, front to back, Drew. You know it. And Dave mentioned rudderless ship. And again, guys, I don't feel like we're being overly negative here. We all want the Jets to succeed here. Nobody is. I don't think we're saying anything that a lot of fans aren't thinking and obviously articulating to us in the chat here. There is some, and Mike McIntyre had his column, what was that, 2 days ago or 3 days ago in the Winnipeg Free Press, and he said something like there's trouble here with the Jets, and it's because, like you guys said, it's the way that they're losing here. If they were losing close games, but the effort was there and the execution was there and everything like that, that would be one thing. But the thing I think that is the most disconcerting is there were a lot of positives to take from the last game against Edmonton. You thought, even though they lost that game, you were thinking, okay, well, they're going to go out on the road here. And, that was much better than the game that they lost 6-1, right? The game 6-1, that was a flusher. You flushed that one down the toilet. Worst game of the season for the Jets. Probably one of the worst games ever in Jets 2.0 history. That was Connor McGill. That was Wayne Gretzky 2.0 coming in as an Oiler or a King and absolutely making the Jets look ridiculous. It was the one-man McDavid show, right? I guess Draisaitl, deserves an honorable mention there. But, the game on Wednesday night, obviously, is the one I'm talking about. And there were a lot of takeaways from that game. You could build on something there. And it looked like the Jets were building on that through a couple of periods, or at least a period and a half. And I agree with you, Drew. Jansen Harkins deserves a lot of credit, on the first Lewis goal. Hustles, stops up, and, just a beautiful pass, Dave, to Trevor Lewis. And then obviously the second Lewis goal, that's more of an individual effort. I think it was Eric Gustafson, if I'm not mistaken, whiffed on that puck. Lewis picks it up at the Jets blue line, just goes in and, uses Harkins as a decoy. But aside from that, aside from maybe 2, 3, 4 players, that's just not going to cut it. It's not good enough. It's not good enough when you've lost 5 games in a row and you're desperate to save your season here.
Well, I said to Dave last night on the post-game show.
Even worse when you've lost 6.
Yeah, that's right. Never mind 5. It's now up to 6. But I said to Dave last night on the post-game show that, what period in the last 6 games were the Jets the better team than their opponent? And there really wasn't one that I could point to where you would say the Jets were not even just substantially better, just better than the team, than their opponent.
Probably earlier in the homestand, right, Drew? In those 2 games against Toronto,
they weren't better than the Leafs really in any of those periods that I can recall.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. If anything, it would have been those games. It certainly wouldn't have been the games against Edmonton.
No, of course not. I mean, it's hard to be perfectly honest, it's hard. Even the worst team in the NHL, even the Detroit Red Wings from a couple years ago, or the Colorado Avalanche from, what would that be? I guess 4 or 5 years ago now. It's hard to go 6 straight games where you don't play one period where you are better than your opponent. That is, to me, emblematic of something rotten. I mean, there's something that I don't know what happened. I don't know, what switch flipped. But remember, they went into Toronto on that Thursday night about 3 weeks ago now, and they pumped the Leafs at the end of that road trip. And it was a hell of a road trip for the Winnipeg Jets. They came back home. They lost on that Saturday night to Edmonton, and people said, okay, it's one game. Since that Saturday game against Edmonton, where they got shut out 3-0, if I recall correctly, nothing has gone right for this team. And I don't know what it's going to be that gets them out of this spiral. If you can't hold a 2-0 lead and a 3-1 lead last night against a Montreal Canadiens team that is absolutely injury riddled, and you just give up 4 unanswered goals and absolutely from the midway point of the second period on get absolutely caved in by a Montreal Canadiens team, I don't see that there's any sort of magic solution that's going to come starting Monday in Ottawa.
The magic solution, Drew, is the players on this team, the coaching. They're the ones that have to dig deep and end this. And it's not just a win over Ottawa. Like, you have to finish the rest of this season strong, right? Like, you've got the game against Calgary to finish the road trip. You've got a couple of games against Vancouver. Like, you don't have a lot of time here to figure this out. So yeah, you're going to have to put together a string of games here where you feel confident in your game going into the playoffs. And we realize that the playoffs are going to take on a life of their own, guys. And regardless if the Jets match up against the Oilers or the Leafs, it won't be against the Habs, obviously, but it'll be against one of those two teams. I mean, there's the series, like I mentioned. I mean, it's a new slate, right? Like, the regular season, we've talked about this so many times, it doesn't matter. But there's a lot of things concerning about this team, and I agree with you, Drew. And you can't blame it all on not having Nikolai Ehlers and Adam Lowry in the lineup for the reasons you just mentioned. Montreal is not blaming their lack of success on not having, Jonathan Drouin or Thomas Tatar or Brendan Gallagher. Like, when Brendan Gallagher went out of the lineup, I'm sure you guys were thinking the same thing as me. I'm thinking, that's not good, because he has such an impact, almost similar to Ehlers. Different players, obviously, but they're the top player. They're one of the top players, if not the top player on the team. And yeah, the Canadians have, had some hiccups and everything like that, but certainly last night they found a way to win. So yeah, there isn't a magic elixir here, guys, that the Jets are necessarily going to find. But this is still a very talented team. But I agree with you. The leadership of this team, the veterans, the players, the highest paid players on this team, like Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor, Blake Wheeler, Josh Morrissey, these are the ones that are going to have to lead by example. It's nice to get a couple goals from Trevor Lewis and Jansen Harkins. He's always going to give you a hardworking effort, and obviously he's a very skilled player because we mentioned that he made that really nice pass. Just nice for him to get his first point of the season. Yeah, I'm shocked that he doesn't have more points already at this point in the season. Hasn't played a lot of games.
Yeah, the coach refuses to play him.
Well, I mean, I'd be shocked if we don't see Logan Stanley in the lineup next game, or even Ville Heinola. But I wouldn't be surprised, Dave, if we see more moves, because this team needs, I don't know, a wake-up call, an injection of energy. I have no idea. But, if this continues, like I said, I think it's going to be a very short playoff run for the Jets.
Well, and Ezzy, I think that to me is the key. When you said there's no magic elixir, and the reality is, who you've got on this team, right? You've got the guys who have been on this lineup for the last 6 games, and you've got to make some changes. And so you have CJC, you've got Marco Dano, you've got Dominic Toninato, who actually looked very good playing games for the Moose, scored 3 goals in his last 2 games, playing on a line with Cole Perfetti. He looked very good. And you got Ville Heinola. So you've got, obviously you've got Eric Comrie, but we're not talking about the goaltending right now. We're talking about the forwards and the defensemen. To me, it's a function of, and we talked about this last night, we've talked about this consistently now. At this point, like, Derek Forbort has come back down to earth, right? For a while now. And Derek Forbort, probably because Neil Pionk has been a very good defenseman for the Winnipeg Jets this season, Derek Forbort has kind of been elevated a little bit. And to me, he's ideally a third pairing defenseman. And you've got a guy in Heinola who could probably jump up and get that seize that opportunity. But to me, it's a function of why are you not giving it to him? Right, especially right now. Like, what is this? And again, we talked about this yesterday. Jordy Ben playing on the left side is not a good thing. It's been he's, even though he's a left shot defenseman, he has been better on the right side. So why is he playing on the left? It's not good. I get that you want to quote. I mean, first of all, there was this idea that there's a rotation. The rotation originally was supposed to be Ben, Heinola, and Stanley, and getting all of those guys in. And then that rotation became Stanley and Ben because Heinola was sent to the Moose. And then it became, well, if one guy, this is what Paul Maurice said at one of the games. He goes, well, if Jordy Ben's having a really, good game or whatever, then I'm not taking him up. Well, it's not as if, I mean, first of all, he's playing 13 minutes a game, so he's not playing a ton of hockey right now. But the point is, it's not as if he did something that needed him to stay in the lineup over Logan Stanley. And again, Logan Stanley's had some rough games, as have most of the Jets during the course of this thing. So to me, it's a function of getting these guys opportunity, because why not? At this point of the season, give Derek Forbort. I mean, it's not as if anybody is doing anything to deserve to stay in the lineup. I think that's kind of what we're getting at, right? It's not like any of these 6 defensemen, you're like, well, the lineup would be lost without them. Tucker Poolman, again, I like Tucker Poolman. He's ideally, a third pairing defenseman. You've got him in the wrong spot. Dylan DeMello as the kind of the guy who, the pony who walks along the thoroughbreds, it's Kentucky Derby Day. Got to throw in the references. I think that's a misuse of his ability. So to me, maybe give Dylan DeMello a shot a little higher in the lineup. Well, whatever. I guess what I'm getting at is you've used the same thing over and over, and now you're not seeing success. You're not seeing success against the best team in the North in Toronto. You're not seeing against the second best team in the North in Edmonton. And now you're not seeing it with having any success against the fourth best team in the North in Montreal with a depleted lineup. So what are you going to do? Are you going to say, well, Ottawa, for the record, has been one of the best teams in the North after their terrible start. They've been a solid team. So and they've won their last 2 games. They're feeling good about their hockey game, and they've got a young, hungry team. And we talked about it with the Moose. When you're young and hungry and wanting to kind of carry this over for next season, you're not like, it's not as if Ottawa's going to be like, oh, sure, let's let the Jets walk all over us. Ottawa's going to come out and play hard on Monday. There's no reason for them not to, because they're young and dumb, and they want to win. And they're full of piss and vinegar. And these guys aren't going to just like lay on their side and let the Jets take it to them. They're literally going to bring it on Monday. So to me, I just don't think that you've got to start mixing it up. And there has to be consequences for these consequences.
Well, and I agree with you, Dave, and I agree that we have been talking about this for a long time here, and I think 99% of Jets fans are going to agree with either putting Ville Heinola in the lineup or putting both Ville Heinola and Logan Stanley in the lineup, and then obviously you're taking Jordy Ben, and most likely you're taking Tucker Poolman out of the lineup. I mean, maybe it's Dylan DeMello, maybe it's Derek Forbort. The point is, I think those types of moves would be welcomed, but those moves are not going to solve the problems here. And listening to you, and again, I'm not trying to poo-poo what you're saying, Dave. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying, like, there's something wrong at the macro level with this group when you've had this type of slide and it doesn't look like it's going to end. Like, it would be one thing, like I said before, if the Jets were losing these close games and you knew that, okay, well, they're playing Ottawa, they're probably going to beat Ottawa. They're going into this game on Monday, and you're actually, I would probably say Ottawa is the favorite.
The Jets aren't the favorite at any game at this point. When you lose 6
that's
in
what
a
I'm
row,
saying, though, Drew, and that's what's the issue here, is that the Jets look like the worst team in the North Division. That's what I'm saying. Like, they're in third place standings wise, but the way they've played over the last 2 weeks, they don't look like a third place team. They don't even look like a fifth place team. And Ottawa's obviously in sixth place now. And I agree with Dave. Ottawa is young and hungry. And, you look at the way Brady Tkachuk and Josh Norris and Thomas Chabot, Drake Batherson, all these guys, like, there's a lot of talent on that team, and they are going to get better. So it's not going to be an easy game on Monday night. But like it's going to be like, again, I don't know how many times we can say this, boys. It has to be Scheifele, Wheeler, Connor, Stastny, Kopp, like the veterans of this team. Those are the guys. If the Jets are going to win on against Ottawa, those guys are all going to have an impact on the game. They might not all have the same impact on the game, but I don't think this and not just the game against Ottawa. This whole streak has to come to an end because these guys elevate their games and they lead by example. That's the way I feel. You guys might disagree, but I think Ville Heinola coming into the lineup will help. He'll move the puck. We all know what he does. He's more talented than Jordy Ben, but Ville Heinola coming into the lineup is not going to make this Jets team all of a sudden be the second place team that we saw 3 weeks ago.
We're looking for answers for the Winnipeg Jets struggles. To join us with the conversation, we're pleased to welcome the Winnipeg Jets radio broadcaster, the voice of the Jets on 680 CJOB. Paul Edmonds joins us on the show now. Paulie, good to see you, buddy. Nice to spend a Saturday morning with you. It's been a little while.
Yeah, my pleasure. No problem. Used to be joining us on the line, but now he's joining us on camera. Yeah, so it's a different new world order we live in, but this is all right. Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I don't know that I have all the answers for you, but I can certainly contribute to the conversation, right?
That contributing to the conversation is all we ask. Whether or not we have the answers, you have the answers, someone else has the answers. It's all about the process of getting to the conversation to get to the answer. So, Paulie, it's now 6 in a row. And last night, it really looked like the Jets should have had that game in hand. 2-0, they're up. 3-1, they're up in the second period. And then 4 unanswered goals by the Montreal Canadiens to obviously give them the 5-3 victory. From your perch where you're broadcasting the games, it just looks like it's a disjointed team. I said this on the post-game show last night to Dave, that it looks like 5 individual players playing a shift, not a 5-man unit playing a shift altogether. How do you see the team as they're going through their struggles right now?
Well, for me, it started with I didn't believe they protected the puck very well. I thought that there was times on retrieves where they tried to scrape it off the wall and overskated it, or passes were in skates. I think of 3 different opportunities, and I'm not just singling this guy out because he had a bad game. That's not what I'm saying, but this is what I see from the eye test. There was 3 opportunities with passes up the middle to Mason Appleton. He didn't take one of them cleanly on his stick. Now, sometimes because we're watching it off the monitor and we're not at the game on road games, you can't tell by where the camera's trying to catch up to that player on that stretch pass. And this is just one example as to whether it was in his skates, it was behind him, he's trying to rudder move it or whatever it is. But I mean, that's just not crisp hockey like they were playing before. Neil Pionk goes to pull the puck off the wall, overskates it. It goes into the middle. A goal ends up scoring from there for Montreal. There was just all kinds of things last night for me where Winnipeg did not protect the puck. There's an old saying in baseball, protect the baseball, right? Make sure that you look after the baseball in the infield. Make sure that you're not throwing it away, giving up extra bases. Same thing with the puck. Same thing in hockey. If you bobble or mishandle it, especially teams like Montreal that capitalize on those opportunities and they fly a guy out right away, it's going to be hard for you to defend. And they last night did not handle the puck very well as a team. From there, it caused chaos in all sorts of the ends of the rink, including the Winnipeg Jets end, where Montreal was able to capitalize on that. I also thought that Montreal was very aggressive on everything. They sent 2 men in all the time, especially on the penalty kill. Like the specialty teams have kind of dried up for the Jets in this little run here, or the sag, if you will. I mean, they can't kill off a penalty without giving a couple of goals up. It's 2 games in a row. They've given up 2 power play goals. It's 3 times over the 6-game losing skid. They've given up 2 power play goals in the game, and their power play has completely dried up, and they can't buy a power play goal right now. So 5-on-5, they've been okay. They made some mistakes last night for sure. But when it comes to the specialty teams game, they are losing that in spades. And it just was not clean. You thought that they were going to have, and I know what you're saying, Drew, you thought that they were going to build on that game that you saw on Wednesday, and it was going to be the Jets returning to, even if they didn't win, it was going to be something similar to that. Well, it wasn't in the way that they handled the puck, and it wasn't the efficient way that we've seen them move the puck up the ice. It looked disjointed, as you mentioned. And I don't know that that I can speak certainly because I haven't traveled, but this team looks like it is exhausted right now, and there's just not a whole lot going on for them. And try as they might, you get to that fatigue standpoint of what happened in March, carried over into April, and now you lose a couple of games, there goes your confidence. And they're fighting a couple of different things right now. I don't know what it's going to take for them to get out of this, but they're going to have their hands full on Monday night against Ottawa, I can tell you that.
And I think, Paul, that's the most frustrating thing, for a lot of Jets fans, and also I imagine the team, that, there aren't those answers there. And, I think it's easy to look at the way the Jets have played and say, like, this isn't going to go well in the playoffs. But is this as simple as you pick up a win against Ottawa, you pick up a win against Calgary, you maybe win 4 or 5 of your last 6 games, and then, this is going to erase this 6-game winning streak. And, this isn't going to necessarily mean that the Jets are going to struggle in the playoffs. Like, is it as simple as that you just need to put together 2, 3, 4 really good games just to erase how badly you've played over the last couple of weeks?
Well, I think there's congruency, Ezzy, in where you are with your game and how you play, and then the results of that, right? The result being a win or a loss. Right now, it's probably less about the result and more about how you're playing. And if you're playing much better and more cohesively, then the results will be there favorable to what you want. Right now, I mean, you thought that you were going to get a build on what you had Wednesday in that loss to Edmonton going into last night. And for, as Drew mentioned, for a good chunk of the game, you're up 2-0, 3-1. You think, okay, they're building on this. They get to 4-1, the game's probably over. But, I didn't like that goal by Joel Armia in the middle last night. I mean, let's push it all in and say that this is kind of what's going on with this team, not just a couple of players. And I know that there's some guys that are playing kind of loose, some of the young guys, which is kind of great to watch, and Harkins and certainly Appleton to some degree, and Vesalainen. I like the crash and bash nature of that line. But the leaders have to lead, and that includes their goaltender right now. There was a couple of goals there last night that I didn't like, and not pinning it all on Connor Hellebuyck, not pinning it all on the top line. But, you have to play the right way, and then when you do, the results will be there for you. So, yeah, I guess, could they beat Ottawa and feel good about themselves? Sure, because it's a win and you get off the schneid. But it's more importantly about how you're going to play right now, getting ready for the playoffs. The way I look at it is, I mean, you're 10 points up on Calgary. I don't see Calgary chasing Winnipeg for a spot. So there's just, what's going to happen here? Are you going to try to catch Edmonton? No. So now you're just battling really with Montreal to try to hold on to third spot, which doesn't really matter unless you want to play Toronto over Edmonton, which right now I don't know that Winnipeg can really be afforded to pick their poison as to who they want to play. They've got, half a dozen games remaining, and you just need to be playing a certain way to get back to feeling good about the way you are playing overall. And Kyle Connor, 1 point in 6 games. Mark Scheifele's sitting there on 199 career goals and 499 points seemingly forever right now. Blake Wheeler struggled last night, I thought, with handling the puck, especially on the 6-on-5 situation that led to the empty net goal. There was a couple of fumbles with the puck, and then there was a seam pass that he tried to force it into at one point when they came in on that 6-on-5 before they gave up the empty net goal. So there's all kinds of things going wrong, and I think what you're seeing from that standpoint is guys trying to force it. Guys care. They really do. They care, and they care to the point where they're trying to maybe do too much. So let's see what happens. They get a day off today, and then they got a practice day tomorrow. Nobody's really watching because they'll be in Ottawa. Nobody watches in Ottawa anyway. And so from that standpoint, it'll be rather anonymous. But here they go on Monday night. And like I said, I think that Winnipeg has always played Ottawa very well, guys, because they have respected Ottawa right from when Ottawa was kind of scuffling along at the start of the year. So this should be a good one. And maybe it's exactly what the Jets need. And Ottawa's moved into that 6th spot overall in the division, and they played very, very well. Could you imagine if the Sens had 30 more games?
Mm-hmm. Dude, they'd be very dangerous, wouldn't they? Paul Edmonds is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning. We're live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms. You know our good friend Paul, of course, as the Winnipeg Jets radio broadcaster on the home of the Jets, CJOB 680 Radio.
Paul, Paul Maurice spoke about it after the game. It sounds like, because you talked about the special teams and we were talking about it earlier. I mean, they've, especially on the PK, giving up that was the difference in the game against the Oilers, giving up those 2 goals on the power play and the Oilers power play. And, Adam Lowry is such an integral part of that. Sounds like they're going to get him back on Monday, presuming everything goes well with the full practice for him on Sunday. And obviously that's going to be a big factor. But, you talked about the team being a little bit tired. And do you think, because one of the thoughts we had with this taxi squad was that they were going to be able to inject guys into the lineup to really kind of reinvigorate it. When you had, veteran guys like a Nate Thompson, not to blame Nate Thompson because he's done well with what he's been given, but those kind of guys would be able to afford an opportunity to kind of rest and recover. A Derek Forbort, for example, who was injured last year, maybe give him an opportunity. Are you a little surprised by the fact that taxi squad, that idea of allowing guys to kind of come in like a Ville Heinola now? He's sitting there and everybody's clamoring for him. Do you see them doing that, or do you think they'll just kind of maybe keep that rotation going, maybe just pull like Jordy Ben out and throw Logan Stanley in?
I know the idea of the taxi squad was asked of Paul at the start of the year, and I know that he didn't want to sit young guys in there, right? He didn't want to keep them compartmentalized into that taxi squad where they weren't playing. So that's part of, I think, one of the reasons why we haven't seen a lot of Ville Heinola. They wanted him to play, so the Moose was probably the best place for him to play. Logan Stanley was there for a while, but he's been brought in. And, I thought Logan's last couple of games before he was taken out of the lineup weren't his strongest of the year. They want to get a real good look at Jordy Ben. And I know that, Jordy's not going to be a candidate for the Norris Trophy, but I haven't felt that Jordy has played that badly. He's done what he's needed to do with Dylan DeMello on that back end. And if you look overall, they've had a couple pretty decent games in moving the puck efficiently. I think that Derek Forbort probably is struggled of late, and as a result, his D partner, and they play a lot of minutes. Neil Pionk played 27 minutes last night almost. Maybe he's a little worn out. So to answer your question, now you also get into moving guys around and shifting guys around, and Paul's always had a propensity for having that veteran lineup. But I do believe that you're going to see Logan Stanley at some point again in a game or two down the stretch in that rotation that continues. And I honestly believe that Ville Heinola, David, is going to factor into the lineup here as well. And that might be a case where Ville gets in and doesn't come out, because we know that he is a puck mover that can make some plays. And that's maybe exactly what this team needs right now, is some fresh legs. Okay. Not just to say, get Ville in there. And, I remember guys pounding the pulpit about Paul Postman needs to get in and brought up from St. John's, and he's the answer to the Jets' woes, and, Nick Patan, and the list goes on and on and on. I mean, I've been around for a few years, as you guys have as well. Yeah. So I don't buy into one guy being the savior here. Okay. Right. But what I can tell you is that Ville Heinola might just give you an injection of what you need, and that's some fresh legs and a playmaking ability guy that can skate with the puck in the back end to help your game moving in that transition department and getting the puck to the forwards and coming up as a unit and activating as a defenseman. So he's not going to be the panacea, but I do see him playing. I know that for a fact, that they will try to inject him into the lineup at some point in this rotation. And then they'll take all the facts, look at the body of work of the rotation of guys that they have in Ben and Stanley and Heinola, and they're going to see who's going to get the opportunity in the playoffs. But I think it's time for Ville to get a few more games in here, because this guy is a first-round draft pick, and people just really like the way he works. And I know the organization really likes him and what he can do on the ice. And now they're going to see if that can help them right now down the stretch. It wouldn't hurt. Let's put it that way.
Paul Edmonds is our guest Saturday morning. You're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms. Paul, and you talk about, the transition ability of Ville Heinola. And what's really jumped out to me significantly during this losing streak is the Jets' inability to get any clean zone exits. We talk about zone entries on the offensive side. They are fighting tooth and nail just to get the puck out of their own zone. I think that the opposition, especially what you saw against Edmonton and certainly to some extent against Montreal, the opposition knows what the Jets are trying to do to exit their own zone, that they don't have those defensemen or those forwards right now who can carry the puck out their own, that it takes a number of passes, of connectivity passes to get the puck out of their own zone. So the opposition is playing more aggressively, forechecking harder, so the Jets can't complete those passes in a crisp fashion. To me, this is as much a statement as it is a question, I suppose. To me, that's why a guy like Ville Heinola is so important. He can, based on the small sample size that we've seen, he can carry the puck out of the Jets' own zone, which is an area that they're tremendously struggling in as of late, especially during this losing streak.
And I go back to the 3 opportunities on those stretch passes to Appleton last night. You make 1 or 2 of those right on tape, and he marches in, splitting the D. That changes the way all of a sudden Montreal wants to look at how they're attacking, and maybe their gap comes off a little bit, and that allows you then, every action has a reaction, right? So that allows the Winnipeg Jets to maybe come out of their own zone a little bit more efficiently or easily. I think it's just a matter of kind of getting that first pass and making sure that it's on the tape, and then you're not fumbling with the puck and having to regroup or carry it back in your own zone and try again or reverse again. I just have found that one of the things that the opposition has worked on right now, knowing that the Jets are mentally and physically vulnerable, is, as you mentioned, Drew, getting on them, and that forecheck has been relentless. And I mean, Mark Scheifele last night had no room at all. Every time he touched the puck, 2 guys were on him. And as a result, he didn't have a very good game, and there was a period again where I think he sat down for about 7.5 minutes and didn't see the ice. One of those was on a line change again that we saw that there ended up being a 4-on-2 for Montreal back the other way. But it's just got to be frustrating too when you don't have any time to handle the puck, not even a quarter of a second, because people are on you. Montreal plays that way as well. But when you do get some guys that can read the ice, that can skate and move the puck as efficiently as Ville can at every level that he's been at, and in the small sample size of the NHL games that he's played, yeah, that's probably not going to be, as I mentioned, the cure-all for what's ailing this team. But it could be a little bit of an element toward helping them get out of this slump by moving faster and more efficiently out of their own zone. Whenever they've slumped before, Paul's always talked about getting back to fast, right? That they slow down. And then when the Jets are right, they're quick, they're fast. And there's a difference between being quick and fast. Well, right now they're slow, and there's no quickness and there's no speed to their game. And a lot of that has to do, I think, with certainly, the confidence level. And then going back before that, they were just kind of beat up coming out of March. We'll see what happens. But fresh legs, as Dave mentioned a segment ago here, probably wouldn't be a bad thing for the Jets right now. Just and even, the young guys bring in that energy too, right? Just a different energy, a different look. They're trying to impress. The older guys are trying to make sure that they're hanging on to their jobs as well and stay in the lineup. So that kind of insertion into the lineup, I think, feeds a lot of things that the Jets might need right now.
Yeah, I think you make some really good points there, Paulie, and just getting away from the losing streak here, because I think you'd agree, it's exhausting, and it's obviously not something that we wish we were talking about. We wish we were talking about, a big win over the Habs, last night. But, to get kind of, to continue with the point that you were making there, Christian Vesalainen has played the last 3 games for the Jets. And obviously, when Ehlers and Lowry come back, I mean, it's logical that, Harkins and Vesalainen will be the 2 guys that come out. But what have you seen from his game? Because obviously he hasn't got himself on the score sheet, but, playing 11, 12 minutes a game, it seems like this is a very different player from the player that we saw last year for the Jets.
Well, I have enjoyed watching Jansen Harkins and Christian Vesalainen of late. I'll start certainly with Harkins, and in talking to Paul Maurice yesterday, he said one of the things that they would like from Jansen Harkins is because he's got a great shot, and we saw that. He scored a goal in the qualifying round against Calgary last year. Remember, he walked in and absolutely sniped it. It was like, whoa, where's this from? And so on the scouting, and it's only because we haven't seen him do that, right? I mean, unless you watch the Moose a lot like David has, you wouldn't know that. Now, you knew that coming out of Major Junior if you scouted him, because it was probably on the scouting report about how he has this asset. Well, Paul said that they'd like to see him shoot the puck a little bit more. And we watched last night, he darted off the near side wall and came in, and he let that shot go, and that's exactly what they wanted to see. So we're seeing these young guys kind of push themselves in. And this is not lost, certainly, on the organization, because remember, Seattle was officially a NHL team yesterday.
Yeah.
They're going to have their expansion draft. And if you have to part with a couple of guys or a guy, you got to have some replacements. And maybe those replacements are right there sitting in your dressing room already. to your point with Christian Vesalainen, Paul has said to us, it's a bigger body. It's a guy that can skate. It's a guy that can shoot. Let's get him on the puck. And he has done that. I've really liked him with Perreault and with Dubois. They've had that crash and bash element to them and the physicality, not running people through the wall, but finishing their checks, puck battling along the wall. Some good effervescence there. The next step for him, according to the organization, is because they like the way he's playing right now. The next step is to win the puck battle off the wall, come off the boards, and make a play with the puck. And that's either darting to the net if you're inside their blue line, or making a play in toward the middle and then going on a give and go or going to the net for somebody else to get the puck to the net. That's the next step for Christian Vesalainen, is to start making plays after he wins those puck battles along the wall with the puck. But I really like the way he played. The important part, I think, for Christian in his development in the last year has been what the organization is called a better attitude, in coming in, working harder, doing the things that you're being asked to do. He's been a good soldier that way. He's been rewarded now. And I think that they're on to something here with a first-round draft pick that only, I guess, a year or two ago, you wondered if he was ever going to play for the Winnipeg Jets after being selected, 2017 in the first round in Chicago that year. Ezra, you and I were there. We covered that draft that year, right? So, yeah, I'm really I'm bullish on the way Christian Vesalainen has played of late. And I know that he might not be a mainstay in the lineup when those two guys come back, Lowry first, and then hopefully Nikolai Ehlers from that standpoint. But I really like the young guys and the way they played and coming in and just doing their jobs. They have not been a problem for the Winnipeg Jets at all in this 6-game losing skid.
You're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Saturday morning, we're live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms. Our guest is our good friend, Paul Edmonds. You know him as the Winnipeg Jets radio broadcaster. All Jets games available with our friends at CJOB Radio 680 on your AM dial.
Paul, the Jets have now played 50 games. 41 of those starts have gone to Connor Hellebuyck. And like you said, some of the goals that have gone in of late have not been the goals we're used to seeing with Connor Hellebuyck. Do you think that during this stretch now, we need to see a little more Laurent Brossoit, who's been steady as a backup, and maybe give an opportunity for Connor Hellebuyck, though, that little bit more rest that he could use to work on his game, get his legs back a little bit, and get him ready for the stretch run, which is the playoffs, which is really when you're going to need him?
Don't disagree. Last night was his league-leading 41st appearance of the year, 41st game start. So leading the league, he's seen a lot of action. And the Winnipeg Jets, unlike a lot of other teams, only play in their time zone on home games. So they've flitted around and bounced around a lot, as they usually do. And from that standpoint, we've always heard about load management in the last year or two, right? Coming out of that Raptors run, certainly to an NBA championship. And then that got translated over into hockey as well. But I think I did some numbers the other day, and based on an 82-game schedule and where he was, and I remembered some things from math in West St. James, I can tell you that. But I did the formula, and I think, he's on pace for around 67, 68 games played this year, okay? Mm-hmm. And if you go back to 17-18, the year that they ran to the Western Conference Final, I think he made 67 or 68 appearances. And that was right at the same time that Boston was saying that Tuukka Rask needed to have some games pulled back on him. They wanted him more into the 50 range, the high 50 range, because it would save that goaltender more for the playoffs. So, yeah, I wonder if maybe it's time that Laurent Brossoit saw an extra game or two here down the stretch just to give Connor Hellebuyck some rest, because we know that this team's going to go to the playoffs. And we know that in the playoffs, your goaltender has to beat the other guy. And if you want to look at it over the course of the history, Jordan Binnington beat Connor Hellebuyck in the one-on-one goalie battle a couple of years ago against St. Louis. You could say that in the Western Conference Final, Marc-Andre Fleury was better than Connor Hellebuyck in that Vegas series a few years ago, even going back to last year in the qualifying round. So, your goalie has to be one of your best players for you to win a series. And Connor Hellebuyck is certainly capable of that. I would imagine, I have no intel on this, but I'm guessing that they're going to go with Laurent Brossoit on Monday.
Mhm.
And then Connor Hellebuyck has a few extra days rest. He'll have today, they'll practice tomorrow, he'll have Monday, he'll have Tuesday, and then he'll get ready for Wednesday night when they fly basically across country from Ottawa to Calgary in a 4.5 hour flight. Who did the schedule on that one? I don't know. But anyway, to answer your question, be more succinct. Yeah, I don't know. They probably have the rotation laid out, but I think you might see over the course of the next 6 games, you might see a couple more starts or 2 starts from Laurent Brossoit just to give Connor Hellebuyck a little bit extra R&R time to prepare for the postseason.
And Paul, just to jump in, Drew's got a last question, but he's going to get one of those games against Vancouver, right? So I think you make really good points there. Brossoit is going to get at least 2 of the 6 games, maybe 3, but that's what you're looking at. You're looking at either a third or half of the starts here with the last 6 games.
Final question for you, Paulie, and this sort of leads seamlessly into our illegal curve question of the day. We were talking about this on the post-game show a couple games ago. When a baseball team is mired in a slump, they have an ace that they throw out every 5 days that the team hopes can sort of put the team on his back and go 8 innings and give up a couple runs. And whoa, look, he's almost individually given us that chance to win and end the slump.
And Paulie, that used to be Drew Mindell. They called him the Sandy Koufax of Tuxedo. So that Drew is that ace.
They only wanted him on the field every 5th day.
Everybody's a comedian. Who is the catalyst? Which one player for the Jets is that catalyst who can be their ace, who can carry the team on their back in that game in Ottawa or in that game in Calgary that says the buck stops with me and I'm going to prevent this losing streak from reaching 7 games or prevent it from reaching 8 games? Who, from your perspective, is that one player on the Jets?
Well, I would like to tell you that I think it would be Mark Scheifele, but I mean, Mark's had a tough week, going back to a week ago Saturday where he was benched on Hockey Night in Canada, right? And you would think that just by the fact that there's the carrot there of the 200th career goal and 500th career point, maybe coming on the same shot, that would be enough to motivate somebody to really try to play the leader, the ultimate leader on the team. And not to say that he couldn't do it on Monday, but he needs to be one of those guys, plain and simple. I mean, he's your number 1 center. He needs to be one of those guys. Blake Wheeler, I thought, had a great game on Wednesday night against Edmonton. Probably one of his best games of the year. He was physical. He was on the puck. Didn't see so much of that last night. And so, he's the other guy that I look to. He's the ultimate leader. I mean, he's a captain. He's paid as the highest paid player. I mean, there is some expectation there. I know he's been hurt and banged up, but he did declare to us not that long ago this is the healthiest he's felt all season. So it needs to come there. And then let's start with Connor Hellebuyck too. If it is Laurent Brossoit, then you're looking for your backup to kind of give you a real good game. But going forward after that, you'd like to see a couple of almost impervious performances from your goaltender. So it's got to come from those guys, that leadership group. Josh Morrissey too. Let's say that he needs to be a little bit better on the back end. I've noticed Josh has kind of tried to jump up in the play a little bit more, and I like that. So those would be 3 guys. Other than that, I think the biggest injection that you're going to get, we covered Ville Heinola, some young legs and a fresh approach. That's great. But getting Adam Lowry back, who, while he doesn't wear a letter, is as important in that room on the bench and on the ice as any player in the Winnipeg Jets in the last 5 years, just because of the way he plays and how he is respected. And the fact that you now get, if he gets back on Monday, you get back to some consistent configuration. You go back to his line, which will probably have maybe a Cop and a Appleton, or it'll be a Cop and a Perreault, or a Perreault and an Appleton. You start to get your third line back and you get some top guys back up where they need to be. And it allows Paul Maurice to run the bench a different way. And I don't know that he's had that of late in the absence of Adam Lowry. Let's not forget, Adam Lowry did a real good job prior to his injury in kind of stifling Connor McDavid, because McDavid's going to get some chances. He's going to get his points. What you want to do is mitigate those chances and those points. And if you only give Connor McDavid 2 points a night and you score 3 goals, I think you're probably on the right track. So Adam Lowry, I think, will provide some of that injection on Monday night too, Drew, but it needs to come. And you're probably tired of hearing this, and so are the listeners and the viewers. The leadership group is the leadership group for a reason. So it needs to be pressed on them, not on Vesseline and not on Harkins and not on Appleton.
Paul Edmonds is the Winnipeg Jets radio broadcaster. All Jets games available with our friends at CJOB Radio. Paulie, it's great to see you, buddy.
Thanks, guys. Anytime. Keep up the great form. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paulie.
Awesome.
Thanks, Paul.
There you guys. Paul Edmonds, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, more Jets talk. Stephen Wino set to join us still, and Daniel Fink, Manitoba Moose broadcaster, going to join us in hour number 3. You're listening, you're watching, you're chatting with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours, and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
While you can't always count on your team winning, nor your favorite player scoring, one thing you can always count on is Bernstein's Deli. They've expanded their services because the team at Bernstein's Deli wants to accommodate your needs and keep you safe. Open Tuesday to Saturday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. to serve you. Head to your phone, in-store or online to shop for groceries or order meals from the restaurant, like the legendary Illegal Curve sandwich. Just go to bernsteinsdeli.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Saturday morning, we're back with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, I'm with Dave Minuk and Ezra Ginsburg. Nice to see so many of you joining us in the chat. A reminder, if you're new here, if you haven't already done it, be sure to smash the like button, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you get alerted each and every time we go live here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We do it after every Jets game. We do it on Saturday mornings as well. That way you won't miss a minute.
Great post-game show last night, boys.
Thank you, Ezzy. I thought your contributions were better than ever, to be perfectly honest. But
exactly, just weigh you guys down. It's much better without me.
Well, hey, you said it, not me. I'm just going to continue on, guys. The Illegal Curve question of the day. We want people to chime in on this one. We asked it to Paulie at the end of the interview. There, you know. Which one player, who's going to be that catalyst? Who's going to say enough is enough from this Winnipeg Jets team and say, I'm going to go out and I'm going to pull a Messier and guarantee a win and then back it up with a hat trick? You know, obviously, that was in the conference final. So it's a slightly, in an elimination game, slightly different context. But that's what seems to be missing from my perspective for this Jets team, is that the leadership hasn't been able to step up over this losing streak. Which one is going to be the player? Which player is going to say enough is enough, and I'm going to take it upon myself to ensure the Jets get a victory on Monday in Ottawa or on Wednesday in Calgary?
Yeah, I agree with Paul, and we already talked about this. It starts with Mark Scheifele, your best offensive player, and especially guys without Nick Ehlers in the lineup. I mean, these guys need to step up, regardless of the wins and the losses, and Kyle Connor as well. Like, Connor has not been very good, through this homestand. I guess the homestand's over, but to begin this road trip and on the homestand. So it's Scheifele, it's Connor, it's Blake Wheeler. I think, to a lesser degree, Andrew Kopp, who has been elevated to a top 6 role. And obviously Kopp is having an excellent season. And you guys know that we all like Kopp's game. But he's got to fill a bit of a void. And I think Paul makes some really good points about Adam Lowry, because if you think about it, guys, the identity of this team has a lot to do with Adam Lowry. And I think, his absence from the lineup, and there's a really good chance I shouldn't say really good, there's a good chance that he plays on Monday, Dave, because we expect him to practice. For those who don't know, he was practicing in a non-contact jersey last practice, and he will
wore a contact uniform morning skate.
Exactly. Yeah. So that indicates that he's going to be in a contact jersey for tomorrow's practice, right? So there is a chance that he comes back. If he doesn't come back Monday, he has a good chance of coming back against the Flames to end the road trip, right? So that's going to obviously help, but this has to come. Josh Morrissey's part of this leadership group. I mean, to a lesser degree, Neil Pionk, he's only been on the team for 2 years, but Pionk's he's not 19 years old. He's a 26-year-old player as well, right? So it's going to come as a collective, but it has to start with Scheifele, Connor, and Wheeler for me. And I don't know if Paul Maurice, decides to put that line together, guys, because Scheifele, Kopp, and Appleton, I liked some of the things that I saw from that line. But I know there are a lot of Jets fans out there that don't want to see that. But I think if you're Paul Maurice, you have to be considering going back to Scheifele, Wheeler, and Connor.
We talked about this on the post-game show last night, and I agree with you, Ezzy, that, Scheifele, last night, look, the analytics were terrible all around for the Jets last night. Scheifele, Kopp, and Appleton, 30%, Corsi 4 last night. Connor, Stasny, Wheeler, 31%, Corsi 4 last night. Those numbers just aren't mediocre. They're downright horrible. I think you have to go back at this point in time, for better or worse. You have to go back to what you know and what is comfortable, and that is comfortable both for Paul Maurice and comfortable for the players themselves. And Connor, Scheifele, and Wheeler is comfortable, and it should be a successful line. And if it's not successful on Monday night, Dave, and if it continues to struggle, then I know it's your ace in the hole. I don't know what's left after that. It's like the Oilers when things are going bad. What does Dave Tippett rely on? He can always go back to what's comfortable and what he knows, and that is, for better or worse, usually better, Draisaitl and McDavid playing together. That is the Jets' equivalent, poor man's equivalent of Draisaitl and McDavid is Connor, Scheifele, and Wheeler playing together. I'd be surprised if they're not back together on Monday night, and Paul Maurice is going to say to them, either directly or indirectly, it's now on you three to play and carry this team through this muck of another game to the victory podium, the proverbial victory podium. Although I'm beginning to think now, maybe after every game, there should be a victory podium for the teams to stand on. That could add a nice element into some hockey coverage.
All right, was that a joke, or was I supposed to laugh?
That was a joke. You're supposed to laugh. That was funny.
Insert laugh here.
And then this segment brought to you by our friends at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, where you can see better comedy than what I just attempted.
Okay, good. Good to
know. That wasn't bad.
I thought it was subpar, but
it wasn't good either.
I think Drew's mired in a 6-game losing streak as well on jokes. But look, I think right now, if you ask me, the guy who's to answer your original question, Drew, I think probably that guy is Nikolai Ehlers. To be honest with you, I think Nikolai Ehlers is the guy who could probably put this team on his back and do what is necessary to get them back into playing that game, that a fast game and an effective game. But I think it lies squarely on Mark Scheifele. You're the alternate captain of this hockey team. You have spoken about wanting to be in the conversation as a top player in the NHL. And if that's the case, when the team needs you most, it's incumbent on you to step up and do that. And the fact is that, again, hockey is a team game. And I talked about the Moose playing as a 5-man unit, and that's what we're not seeing enough of from the Jets. So I don't know that it's as simple as because again, in baseball, so much is on the pitcher, and if the pitcher is on fire, then really what the rest of the team is doing is somewhat immaterial. Hockey obviously is a different game in that aspect. And so you can't necessarily say one guy is going to take it over, even like in basketball, where like a LeBron James can take over a game. I'm not saying, and I'm going to be proven wrong because Connor McDavid clearly can do that for the Edmonton Oilers. Yeah. But at the same time, I think it really is incumbent on Mark Scheifele. I don't think it's on Blake Wheeler as much. I think he needs to step up as the captain of the team for sure. But I think Mark Scheifele is that guy. If you're asking me, the one guy who right now is in the lineup and can do that for this Winnipeg Jets team, who has the ability offensively to score, some goals. I mean, what's the biggest problem for the Winnipeg Jets? Well, there's a lot. The special teams isn't good. And one of the, it's slow, it's predictable. It's one of the things where Paul mentions, and we were talking about it before, is you've got to get away from being so predictable and slow. And it's just that you're allowing, you have a man advantage, but it's a disadvantage when the team can anticipate what you're doing every time.
You've got to move the puck down low. That's when the Jets have had the most success. So you're talking about, Scheifele, Wheeler, Stastny. You're talking about, on the second power play group, right? Like you're seeing Appleton. He was on the first power play unit, right, Dave? But that's when they have the most success, right? Like when they're moving that puck down low. And yes, I agree. The Scheifele, Wheeler to Scheifele cross seam, like Scheifele's not line A. That's not working. Buff's not here anymore. The big shot from the point. Like Pionk and Morrissey can both, find those seams and find some traffic and put the puck on net. But there's too much skill on this Jets team to have a power play that is struggling this much. So I agree with you. And, to the point, obviously, we're not all putting this on Scheifele. Scheifele, he is one of the best players in the game. He's top 10 in scoring. He's got 55 points in 50 games, pardon me. Yeah. And, we talked earlier about the end of that road trip. And you remember, they lost to Ottawa. I think it was a Monday. And then they had the second game against Ottawa. And then we talked about that, 5-2 or whatever the score was against the Leafs. It was a very impressive performance by the Jets. It was Mark Scheifele who led. So I think Scheifele will lead this team on Monday. Obviously, I don't know that they're going to win. I guess I set up that haircut. So, that probably is a good indication here, boys. But I think Scheifele will lead this team. And I think he relishes that opportunity. And I agree with you, Dave. He does want to be considered one of the top players in the game, but he's got to show it. The last couple of games haven't been good. I thought he was pretty good, to start the homestand with those games against the Leafs. But there's no doubt that, he's got to be better than he was last night against Ottawa.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Pardon me, Montreal.
Against Montreal, we know what you meant there. That's the problem right now for the Jets, is that their best players are just a little MIA, and it's is it troubling. And it's troubling to Jets fans because we can watch it. I'm sure it's troubling to the players in the dressing room because they do seem to be a little bit bereft, as I mentioned off the top of the show, a little bit bereft of answers last night. It looked like a team that just didn't have, in the post-game availabilities. They said, we're a good team. We're just going through a very difficult time. And that's true. They're a good team on paper, but right now on ice, which is, the only place it matters, they just can't get anything going. With Lowry coming back into the lineup, let's assume he comes back because all indications
seems reasonable.
Barring a setback that's unexpected, it seems like he's going to be back in the lineup. How does that tweak the forward group for Monday? What changes do you make? We talked that we all think that Connor, Scheifele, and Wheeler will be back together for Monday's game. So with Lowry coming back and obviously him being a centerman and Dubois, Stastny, Scheifele, and Thompson already being up the middle, what happens with Lowry's return to the lineup on Monday, and how does that affect the lineup and the forward trios for the Winnipeg Jets?
Well, sorry, I didn't know if we're going to me or Ez, but I think most likely Christian Vesalainen will come out of the lineup. I think that they'll keep Jansen Harkins in the lineup. I think you're going to see Mason Appleton drop back. To me, again, like I said, I like the way Jansen Harkins can play up the lineup. I think that's an opportunity he hasn't really been afforded this season with the Winnipeg Jets. I think that have an opportunity with a player who's cerebral, who's great with the puck, who has a good shot, and again, sometimes it's a confidence thing. When you're expecting to be an everyday player, you've arrived, you're ready to assume, not take a mantle and assume that it's yours, but work hard and get there, and then you're not really afforded that opportunity. It can sometimes be a little bit difficult, especially on a younger player. So again, like I said, to me, I don't like the Kopp and Appleton and Scheifele line. I don't think when you mix Michigan and Michigan State, it's never gonna be a good thing. The Spartans and Wolverines traditionally don't get along.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I think that has a lot of stick-to-itiveness. I think, again, like I said, Mason Appleton's worked hard to get where he's gotten, but I think you're seeing him in an ideal situation playing a little bit farther down in the lineup. And again, what are you going to do with Paul Stastny? Are you going to keep him up the middle, or are you going to move him back onto the wing? Pierre-Luc Dubois, people have liked that Dubois, Vesalainen, and Perreault line. And the truth is, I like Perreault with anybody, really. I mean, Matty Perreault has been a guy, who just, because he's managed to stay healthy this year, has just continued to work his ass off every single game. And he's such a hard worker. He doesn't play the big minutes, but he is such a, important piece for this Jets team. So to me, he's a guy who you can do quite a bit with. I don't know that I would go, you talked about it with the Scheifele, Connor, and Wheeler, just because it hasn't been sure they can score, but defensively it hasn't made a good line. And that's one thing you got to factor in with this Jets team right now is defensively, you've got to kind of make sure you're maximizing things. So I don't know what it is. I mean, again, Paul Maurice talked about it, for that second game of the homestand, the first game against Toronto, he wanted to have his lines ready to go so he could run with them. But one of the things we talked about yesterday is you can't predict what's going to happen. You lose Nikolai Ehlers for the rest of the regular season. You lose Adam Lowry for, 3 games, 4 games, whatever it's going to end up being. And the reality is, that whatever, and again, Paul Maurice learned this in game 1 of the play-in series. You lost Patrick Laine and Mark Scheifele. So the point is, you're not going to be able to say, yeah, of course, in an ideal world, this is what it's going to look like. So I'll get consistency with those guys over the course of the last 10 games. But Ezzy, we know that that's not realistic because of injuries.
I'll tell you what I'm doing if I'm Paul Maurice, or what I would just do with this Jets lineup. We already talked about, Connor, Scheifele, Wheeler. Lowry's obviously going to go back up the middle. You mentioned Dubois there, Dave. He doesn't have a goal in 11 games.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem. Honestly though, we're talking about Scheifele and Wheeler and Connor, but I mean, Pierre-Luc Dubois is a guy who's got to be better as well. I like Dubois, and I realize his dad's a coach of the Moose, and I'm not coming down on him. I'm not saying he's been awful, but he hasn't been great either. And that's one guy that's also going to have to elevate his game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they traded Patrick Laine and Jack Roslovic for this guy, so he's got to be better as well. And I think you might go back to Kopp, Lowry, and Appleton, Dave. And you mentioned Jansen Harkins. If I'm Paul Maurice, I'm thinking Matty Perreault, Nate Thompson, Trevor Lewis. That was a fourth line that was really good. Like, go back to what was when you were having success. Yeah. Go back to that. Who's the guy that gets elevated to the second line? So the missing pieces there, I would go with Dubois, Stastny, and Harkins.
Yep,
as a second line. I like Jansen Harkins in an elevated role. Reward him for how good he was last night versus the Canadiens. I thought he was arguably their best forward. Obviously, Trevor Lewis was good too. So go up the middle with Scheifele, Lowry, Dubois, and Thompson, and put Stastny back on the wing. Even though I realize ideally you want Stastny playing up the middle as your third line center, and that maybe moves Lowry down. Go back to Lowry, Kopp, Appleton. That was such a good line all year long. So that's what I would do if I was Paul Maurice, or if I was coaching the Jets. But we'll see what happens. There's lots of questions that need answers here.
Let's take a quick break. When we come back, our good friend Stephen Wino of the Associated Press is going to join us, talk about the Jets, talk about the North Division, talk about the NHL as a whole. Much more Jets talk to come, and Manitoba Moose conversation in the final hour as well. You're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. You're watching the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. You're chatting with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whitened my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
While you can't always count on your team winning, nor your favorite player scoring, one thing you can always count on is Bernstein's Deli. They've expanded their services because the team at Bernstein's Deli wants to accommodate your needs and keep you safe. Open Tuesday to Saturday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. to serve you. Head to your phone, in-store or online to shop for groceries or order meals from the restaurant, like the legendary Illegal Curve sandwich. Just go to bernsteinsdeli.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Saturday morning, we're back with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms. I'm your host, Drew Mindell. I'm with Ezra Ginsburg and Dave Minuk. We're pleased to welcome to the program our good friend from the Associated Press. He covers the NHL. Stephen Wino joins us on the show. Stephen, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Great to see you guys, too.
Yes, Stephen, obviously brought you on, talk about the NHL. We're into the final, for some teams, half dozen games. For some teams, I think the Canucks still have a solid 34 games left in their regular season, something like that. But, Stephen, here in Winnipeg, I'm not sure if you're aware, I would assume you are, we're mired. The Jets are mired in a 6-game losing streak where nothing has gone right for the team right now. How important do you think that the playoff seeding in the North Division is this year as opposed to in a quote-unquote regular season?
I think it matters, particularly for the Jets and the Oilers, to avoid the Maple Leafs in the first round. I think as long as – because you don't have fans in these arenas unless these teams move to an Arizona, a Nashville for the first couple of rounds. You're not going to have any kind of home ice advantage outside of the last line change. That I think for these teams, it's avoid that fourth spot. And the Jets are dangerously close if the Canadians catch fire, that the Jets slip into that fourth spot. You don't want to, you're going to have to go through the Maple Leafs likely to get through to the third round. But I think the key is you want to set up that matchup with the Oilers, a beatable team, not a team that is a pushover, but certainly you don't want to play the Toronto Maple Leafs in the first round of the playoffs.
Stephen, we obviously want to talk to you about the Washington Capitals, a team that you cover, and I mean you cover the entire NHL. But the Capitals and the Penguins. I mean, I think I don't know how you feel about the season. We've talked about it a lot on this show, but covering the Jets in the North Division, we kind of forget that there's a whole other league out there. And I've obviously watched some Capitals and watched some Penguins this year, but when you consider that they're duking it out for first place in the East Division right now, and obviously the Capitals were expected, to be one of the top teams in the East Division, but the Penguins weren't. Like, what are you seeing from these two teams? Because to me, it looks like these teams are on a collision course to face each other, to get into the Eastern Conference Final.
It does feel like one of those years, right? Like it feels like another Ovi, Sid, Malkin kind of, like you're going to have one of those classic series between these teams, and that, look, anybody can come out of the East. But yeah, it does seem like that. And I was never more wrong this season about any team than the Pittsburgh Penguins. I thought they had gotten old. I thought that this was a team that had traded Matt Murray away and didn't have the goaltending. And I was completely wrong. And this is a team, starting with Jim Rutherford and what he built and what Ron Hextall and Brian Burke have done since then, that this is a really good team. This is a team that can go to a Stanley Cup final again, even with Tristan Jarry and Casey DeSmith as the goaltenders. And the Capitals, I don't know what to expect. I go into this year every year, basically from like 2014 to 2018, saying really good coach. They've got a solid team. They've got Alex Ovechkin, Nicholas Backstrom, Evgeny Kuznetsov, but the goaltending is a question mark now. And maybe for the first time since 2012 when Braden Holtby was a rookie, you don't know what you're going to get from the goaltending with the Washington Capitals, with Ilya Samsonov or Vitek Vanacek. That's the biggest question. And honestly, if you're the Capitals, you probably want to play the Penguins, given that the Islanders could give the Capitals fits in the playoffs. You probably want to play the Bruins more than anybody else. But this is going to be a dogfight between these four teams. Throw the Islanders and the Bruins into the mix just to get out of the East.
Stephen Wino is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Stephen covers the NHL for the Associated Press. We are watching the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on our YouTube channel. We're live on all of our social media platforms.
You know, Stephen, I can't believe it's already the third question. Nobody mentioned it's racing day. It's first Saturday in May. You're a big racing guy. And so, of course, before I get into the hockey question, what's your pick for the Kentucky Derby?
Look, I think Essential Quality is going to win the race. He's the best horse in the race, but I'll give you guys a long shot pick. There's a horse named Brooklyn Strong, the number 3 horse in this field, who was the last horse to get in, hasn't won a race since December, but has all the makings of a horse who could just blow up your Derby card. I would throw him into exotic, it's exactas, trifectas, superfectas if you're so inclined. Essential Quality, I think, is the best horse in the race. There's horses like Rock Your World, Known Agenda, who could make a run for it. But I think Essential Quality becomes the first grade to win the Kentucky Derby since Giacomo in 2005.
Nice. Okay, good. Now back to hockey. Now, Stephen, the one thing I'm wondering, and I'm not sure what your thoughts are on this, which is why I'm going to ask the question. How much of a factor do you think fans being in the buildings will play? Because, of course, like you said, here in the North Division, that's not something we're expecting to see. They were planning for it, but because of the way the rollout has gone, it's not likely to happen. But how much of an advantage could that play for a team like that are playing to higher capacities? Because we know what a boost it is emotionally for the players to be playing in front of teams.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be an uneven home ice advantage. It'll be uneven, certainly, and just knowing that a team like St. Louis could have 50% capacity, or Tampa Bay or Florida, that's where it becomes an issue. Whereas Washington's going to have 10% capacity, the Islanders at maybe at 15-20%. The unevenness is going to be a thing I think players are going to be concerned about. And the Capitals only had their first game with fans earlier this week, and said it does make a huge difference. As Tom Wilson said, it feels like your first NHL game. Even 2,000 fans makes a huge difference up from 0. But yeah, when you have this happened in the NFL playoffs, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had a chance during most of the season to play in front of half full stadiums. They went on the road and won games, but it certainly was an uneven amount of noise, particularly in an NFL game, but certainly in the NHL, to have an uneven of kind of roar of the crowd and the things we expect. And it's going to be interesting to see how much that affects the playoffs. I think it's going to affect it a little bit. And it might be the difference of momentum in one game, and it might be the difference in a series.
Stephen Wino's our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're talking about the NHL with Stephen, a little bit of horse racing too, as Stephen's a big horse racing guy. It is the Kentucky Derby Day, first Saturday in May, of course. Stephen, you talk about the playoffs and you talk about home ice advantage, and we frankly don't know where the North Division playoffs are going to occur. Looks like we actually may have just dropped Stephen off. It looks like Stephen's internet may have cut out.
He's off to the races.
He's off to the races. Exactly. He's had enough of us. And frankly, I can't blame him for that. We are, most people usually can handle us in very small doses, but it is there you go. Okay, Dave, explain the photo.
Okay. Well, I mean, we're doing some horse racing talk while we wait. This is the first ever horse that the Minuk family was Avenging Bullet. I actually missed the game because I was at a softball game, which was annoying, but, our family was lucky enough to have the back end of number of horses at the Ascent went down. So got in the winner's circle a few times.
There you go, Dave Minuk, horse racing. You're horse country there. Yeah, exactly, Dave. Stephen Wino is back. Stephen, good to see you again. I was going to say, it's bizarre. We're sitting here with half a dozen games to go in the regular season, and we really don't know where the North Division playoffs are going to happen. How much of a factor do you think that is? Do you think, it's clear that the conference finals are going to probably happen in the United States, but is it weird to you that the North Division still doesn't know if they're going to head down south to play the semifinals and then the division finals?
Look, at this point of pandemic, it can be weird to me, but the waited so long to pick the sites for play last year, and remember, made the right choices with Toronto and Edmonton, given the cases of COVID in those cities at that time. And so the league wants to wait the longest possible time to figure this out, and I think that's okay. I think it's right to say we're going to figure this out based on the situations across Canada right now. We don't know if the restrictions are going to be province to province travel wise in the coming weeks, and I think the league's going to wait to the latest possible moment, but possibly even the end of next week to decide this. I think ultimately it's going to wind up being in empty arenas in Canada for the first 2 rounds, and then the semifinals and final in the United States. But I think that's the plan that I expect to happen. What I would suggest, honestly, is you get everybody into the U.S., you vaccinate everybody, let them practice, take a day off practice and play, and then I think you can have certainly a more normal pace of the playoffs from there.
Yeah, Stephen, I think we would all agree that probably makes the most sense at this point. And, hopefully we can ask you 1 or 2 more questions here. Just wanted to go back to the Capitals and Penguins. Obviously a huge game tonight. John Carlson and Ovechkin have been out of the lineup recently. Is there any update? Are we expecting at the very least Carlson back? And is there any concern that, these injuries might keep either of these players out maybe, longer term than originally thought?
Looks like no John Carlson and no Alex Ovechkin for a second consecutive game. I would be concerned about it on the Ovechkin side because he doesn't miss games like this. He doesn't miss consecutive games. He hasn't missed more than 3 in a row since 2009. I started covering this team in 2011, and he's never missed this many games in a row because of injury. I do think the Capitals are playing it very safe right now, and Alex Ovechkin plays through a lot. But the Capitals have lost playoff series, not because Alex Ovechkin has not performed, but because he's not 100%. He's playing at 40% or 50% healthy. And I think that's a situation that the Capitals are trying to avoid by letting him rest right now. I do think it's a major concern if he has a lingering groin or a hamstring problem that's going to affect him come playoff time. But I think the Capitals are going to play it super, and we don't care about playoff seeding. We just want to get Alex Ovechkin healthy.
Stephen Wino covers the NHL for the Associated Press. He's a big horse racing guy, and he's a big Jacksonville Jaguars fan, the only Jaguars fan I know. So I'm sure that you're happy, Stephen, about the addition of Trevor Lawrence as the latest quarterback savior of your favorite NFL franchise.
He is, and everyone keeps asking me wherever I go, do you like the pick? Are you satisfied with the pick? How could I not be? He's the savior of the organization, and the draft the other night was a top 10 moment in the franchise.
There you go. Stephen Wino covers hockey, he covers horse racing, he covers football. What can't he do? Stephen, appreciate your time, appreciate your insight. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. There you go, Stephen Wino from the Associated Press joining us on the Illegal
Was that horseshoe clopping that I heard there?
It did sound very much like some horses going on in the background.
I thought Stephen. I don't think Stephen's in Kentucky. He might be. I assume he's in the DC area. But yeah, it's a big day. I know, Drew, that you're pumped up. Your family's pumped up with the Kentucky connection. So shout out to Laura, and it's going to be fun to watch today.
We will be playing my old Kentucky home, and I will be having some bourbon in the middle of the afternoon. So it's a very day drinking kind of Saturday for yours truly. So good luck to my kids.
Which one of those is Waggles, Dave?
Waggles is here too. Hold on. Oh yeah, Waggles.
There's Waggles.
I'm glad you brought out a picture and not a big bottle of glue, because that would have been really awkward at that point.
No, Waggles actually was Waggles. I believe Waggles was in the running to be like you, Drew, the oldest horse of the winning of the older horse of the year. So Waggles was a good horse for us.
And Waggles' mother was a mother.
Yeah, he was like the distances. Loved the slop. Loved the slop.
Alrighty, let's talk more about the Winnipeg Jets. Saturday morning, this is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live here on YouTube and all of our social media platforms. This segment
we should be having Eddie O. Sorry, Drew. I was just going to say, I feel like Eddie O should be on the show right now.
Well, Eddie O will be on the NBC coverage of the Kentucky Derby. Eddie O is certainly a big horse racing guy. Remember when we had him on the show last time when he was in town to promote his book? He told us that great story about he was a regular with our friends at Assiniboia Downs and all of this, or where he got the horse racing buzz at that point of time was his time here in Winnipeg as a player. As I was mentioning, this segment brought to you by Dr. Les Rikus and the team at Linden Market Dental Center, official dentist of Illegal Curve Hockey. Don't be an Ezzy. Always wear a mouth guard. Give yourself peace of mind protection as well as facial, teeth, and mouth protection. To make an appointment to get your teeth to ting, visit lindenmarketdentalcenter.com.
Drew, I know you want to get back to the Jets here, but like, can we talk about Trevor Lawrence's flow? Like, that flow is it's next to none. Like, it's incredible. It's like Fabio hair. Is it not?
I mean, he's got some nice hair. Yeah. I'm honestly, I'm a little surprised you knew that, as you're not a huge football guy. So,
well, I mean, I follow it a little bit, and obviously I follow the first round more so than, the other rounds, but I just like that hair is incredible. I didn't know anything about him before the draft, but I mean, that's, it looks like more like a surfer.
Well, if there's anybody who knows anything about hair on this show between the three of us, it's clearly you, because that ship has sailed for me, and Dave always wears a hat. So really, between your hair on top and your hair on your face, Ezzy, which apparently won't be there on Monday night's post-game show, but time will tell with that factor. Getting back to the Winnipeg Jets, we know that, despite the losing streak, it is still more than likely that the Jets are going to face off with Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers in that first round of the playoffs. McDavid, we know what he did against the Jets this year is remarkable. It was, out of this world. It should be, frankly, a little bit embarrassing to the Jets players and the Jets franchise. 22 points in 9 games played against the Jets. He did not have fewer than 2 points per game against the Jets at all this year. So let me ask you guys this. How do the Jets, come playoff time, mitigate or slow down Connor McDavid? What approach do they take? What matchup do they take? Because they haven't been able to do it at all this season. And frankly, if they can't find a solution to doing so, just even mitigating his impact, then it's going to be a very quick playoff series for the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, and he is the one player that you don't ever expect to fully shut down, right, guys? Like he gets a couple points every game. It's really incredible. I think when we look back at this season, I think Connor McDavid and Austin Matthews, the way that they have performed in the shortened season is really going to stand out almost as much as who wins the Stanley Cup, really, right? Like Matthews with a chance to hit 40 goals and McDavid with a really good chance to hit 100 points, right? Like it's really ridiculous. It's absurd almost, but these guys are generational talents, right, Dave? Like when we were covering the drafts in Florida and Buffalo back in 2015-16, this is what scouts thought was going to happen 5-6 years later, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, you have to be as close to mistake-free as possible, right, Drew? And we've seen the Jets turn the puck over against the Oilers, and that has led directly to goals against Connor McDavid. So your defensive coverage, has to be on. It has to be. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's got to be excellent. It's got to be great. And I really do think having Adam Lowry in the lineup is crucial. Because, we've seen Mark Scheifele's line, whoever is on that line, but let's assume that it's, Scheifele, Connor, Wheeler, or Scheifele, Ehlers, and Wheeler. We've seen McDavid's line dominate the Scheifele line. So it's going to be, whatever line Pierre-Luc Dubois is on, or it's going to be Adam Lowry's line. But I certainly like Lowry, Kopp, and Appleton. But, you've just got to be, you have to be playing at a high level, because McDavid, and I said this before, and I think you guys would agree with this, what McDavid is doing individually is what Gretzky was doing in the 80s. It really is. And I've said this to you guys before. I think by the time his career's done, I think McDavid is going to be, in that conversation. It's going to be Gretzky, McDavid, and Crosby. Like, who's the best player of all time? And obviously it's Gretzky, but those guys aren't far behind. If you look at what they've already done, in their careers. So you have to be sharp. You can't turn the puck over. And, I think you have to combat McDavid with speed. And that's why I've always said the only guy that can really match him is Nikolai Ehlers. You obviously don't have him now, but in the playoffs, I think Ehlers is going to be, for me, the most important guy on this Jets team. So
now, who would Ehlers be playing with in that example? I mean, I agree that it
Dubois, probably Dubois. I mean, I like what Dubois and Ehlers have done together, and and then does that mean it's going to be Connor, Scheifele, and Wheeler? Probably. I mean, all things being equal, I think that's probably what you're going with. And does that mean Andrew Kopp is on that second line, or is it Paul Stastny? I would probably at this point go with Stastny because I really like Kopp, Lowry, and Appleton together. But I would probably say, just if you're looking at pairs, Drew, I would probably pair Ehlers with Dubois.
Does Paul Maurice understand and or accept that Mark Scheifele cannot handle Connor McDavid, Dave? Because we keep seeing that matchup. We keep seeing Scheifele get that matchup against McDavid. We keep seeing Scheifele get that matchup against Austin Matthews. And we know Scheifele's shortcomings defensively.
Yeah.
Yet Maurice continues to go with that. Does he understand? Does he accept that you're playing into the opponent's hand if you continue to do so?
Ask me in a month.
Thanks, Dave.
Well, I mean, like, no, because Drew right now, it would be clearly no. I mean, obviously he's trying to see what, I mean, look, I guess the one thing Paul Maurice has been afforded based on the way the Jets have played earlier in the season is the ability to tinker and the ability to test things out and the ability to say, okay, does this work? Does this not work? And so to me, you can take a look at what Mark Scheifele is able to do against Austin Matthews or against Connor McDavid or Pierre-Luc Dubois against those guys, and then you can evaluate it as a group. And the point, I think, the key will be, what does he do in a playoff series? How does he make adjustments? Because that's kind of the knock, right? Does this coach adjust enough? In game, not necessarily, but I think we got more than 26 likes, but I appreciate the sentiment from Timmerman. But the point is, I think it's one of those situations where you just have to see what is he going to do when it comes to, that sort of matchup. And especially because, again, Dave Tippett is a very good coach when it comes to getting what he wants out there when he wants it. And so do you go hard matching? Do you just again have this collective team effort to say, listen, we've got, 5, when 97 is on the ice, that's your job. That's it. And, and that's the other thing. People are saying, make his life miserable. Now, of course, folks are going to want to remember there was a guy named with number 99 in Edmonton who made life hell for the Jets 1.0 when regardless of what they were trying to game plan for him, it was very difficult. And he, but that was a much more skilled Edmonton team, right? If you were able to contain Wayne Gretzky, well, maybe you weren't containing Mark Messier. Well, if you were containing Mark Messier and Wayne Gretzky, well, they had the guy named Yari Curry or Glenn Anderson, or the list goes on and on and on and on and on. That was a more talented Edmonton team. And now the other thing that we have to factor in is Mike Smith has been excellent. Mike Smith has been rejuvenated this year, and he's looked great. And the Edmonton defense has seemed to, it's ironic, right? And it's interesting. Someone was talking about it before, the idea that Montreal beats Edmonton beats Winnipeg, and Winnipeg can beat Montreal. Like it's just kind of like three-headed tiger constantly chasing its tail, whatever. And so you have to kind of, that's what I'd be interested to do. And I haven't had a chance to look at it, but it'd be interesting to see what teams have been successful in shutting down Connor McDavid. The answer, based on the way he's projecting, and to Ezzy's point, haven't been many. But what have those teams been able to do to implement against the Oilers? The Flames just did it. Like the Oilers looked unbeatable, even though the Jets played them better in that second game of the series. And then Edmonton goes to play Calgary and they lose 3-1. So what were the Flames able to do to turn things around? Because the Flames aren't a particularly good team, right? It's not like things are going well in Calgary right now. So if a Calgary team can beat an Edmonton team that looks unbeatable to Winnipeg, but yet the Jets have success against Calgary, what did Calgary do to neutralize Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl to win that game?
You have to keep quite simply, guys, though. Like, obviously, I'm not going to give you all the answers in the most articulate way here, but at the basic level, you have to keep the puck off of his stick, right? Like, and limit his speed. Mm-hmm. We have all watched McDavid many times, and we all know what he can do. Sometimes it's like a wizard. It's like he's been called the cheat mode, right? Mm-hmm. And so we know that, like, if you're going up in a one-on-one situation, like, look how many times the Morrissey-Poolman pair, Dave, has gone up against the McDavid line. Like, it's not all just forward line versus forward line.
Yep.
Like, McDavid has beat, both Morrissey and Poolman pretty badly. And I'm not singling those guys out because they're both good defensemen. But at the very base level, you're going to have to limit what he's really good at. And that's obviously a lot of things. But the number one thing is speed. And, so you have to play him tight. You have to try to take away his speed. But again, you almost expect McDavid to get 1 or 2 points. And there aren't that many players in the league where you expect them to get 1 or 2 points because they're that good, right? Like, there's a handful of guys, we're talking about, the Sidney Crosbys, the Austin Matthews, I guess, you'd throw in maybe a Brad Marchand, right, Dave? Like there are only, let's say 5, 6, maybe 10 guys that are that good. I wouldn't even put that many guys in the McDavid category. So you have to try to limit what he's good at, because you're never going to completely stop him. But it is going to start with what matchup you're able to get. So if you're in Edmonton, you're not going to have the last change. So you're going to try to get Dubois' line. You're going to try to get Lowry's line up against McDavid. But you I think have to look at reuniting Dylan DeMello and Josh Morrissey as your top pair, because you've had Morrissey and Pullman together for the majority of the year, and you've lost to Edmonton 6 times.
7.
So,
but your point is well taken. I mean, you look at McDavid's numbers, and so McDavid has 84 points on the year. Of those 84 points, 43 of those points have come against the Jets and the Senators. So the vast majority of his points have come basically in, 17 or 18 games. The other games certainly hasn't been shut down, but he's been neutralized more. He has not been as dominant. So whatever the Jets have been doing clearly isn't working. And you can't just send it back out, the same strategy and the same approach, that you've done during the 9 regulation games, because it's asking, what the definition of insanity, like we've talked about, doing the same thing over and over again. If the Jets don't change their approach to Connor McDavid for the start of the playoffs, then why would anyone think that he's not going to be able to be as dominant as he has been during the regular season? I mean, you have to look.
Drew, I was just going to say, the other thing too is there are other players on the Oilers that have been hurting the Jets in the season series. Alex Chason has been a factor against the Jets. Leon Draisaitl has been a factor. Kaylor Yamamoto. Like, I agree that you have to shut down the best player in the world right now.
Yeah. Look,
what about Darnell Nurse? Nurse is quietly in the Norris conversation. I don't think he's going to win the Norris. Shout out to Adam Fox. But I think that, when you talk about this Oilers team, that's like, we talked to Stephen Wino about the Penguins. And I didn't pick the Oilers to make the playoffs. Like, I had them finishing 5th, and I had Vancouver. So you guys can make fun of me for that pick, even though I did pick Rod Brindamore to be Coach of the Year, and I think he has a good chance at winning Coach of the Year. So I'm right once out of every 7 years. But you have other players on this team to worry about. I didn't even mention Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who happens to be a pretty good player as well.
If you neutralize McDavid and you get beat by the other guys, then so be it.
I agree.
But,
I know what you're saying.
You haven't stopped McDavid, so it doesn't matter. But the other guys, it doesn't matter if you can't stop McDavid. Saying, "Hey, I shut down Darnell Nurse or I shut down Ryan Nugent-Hopkins." Well, that's great. McDavid still got 3 points a game, and the Oilers still kicked your ass.
I think one of the keys, though, for the Jets team is the word discipline. I think that, we've seen what the Oilers have been able to do against them on the power play. And I think that's one of the keys for this Jets team is you just can't take those stick penalties, the high sticking, the tripping, that sort of casualness with your stick. Again, it's a collective effort. And that's when I think we're kind of getting, repeating it over and over again. Drew, you say you can't keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Well, they've been icing the same lineup, so perhaps they don't necessarily agree with you, those that make the decisions. But again, I think it really is going to be incumbent on them to watch their tape and figure out what, to your point, Drew, that's 50% of your points against 2 teams.
Yeah.
Well, then there's another 3 teams that you're not achieving that many points against. You're still doing well, you're still having success against them.
Yeah,
but you're not to the same degree. So what
I was going to say he's still a point a game player against the other 4 teams.
Of course, but he's not a 2 point a game player.
There's lots of players in the NHL who are point a game players. So you have to, I believe, if you're the Winnipeg Jets, and it's not as simple as replicating what other teams do, but I do think you have to look at the approach Toronto's taking and the approach Calgary's taking, and the approach Vancouver and Montreal are taking, and say, what can we steal from them? What hybrid approach can we take, stealing a little bit from Calgary and a little bit from Montreal and a little bit from Vancouver, and saying, okay, combine all of that, take something from our team as well, and this is our new approach. But game in, game out, doing the same thing you've done for 9 regulation games that led to him getting, 23 points in those 9 games. I mean, you can't just do it again and say, okay, Scheifele, now you're going to get him. Because
but I think the question has to be asked, though, are the Jets, or it just has to be said, are the Jets just not good enough defensively to handle McDavid, right? Like personnel wise, like that has to be asked.
it's not like the Vancouver Canucks are a defensive juggernaut or anything.
No, but Drew, you're talking about how do the Jets strategize and what system can they put in place to limit Connor McDavid? What I'm saying is it might be that, and also do the Jets have the personnel
definitely
to get the job done? That's what I'm saying.
I mean, no question that the Jets defense, is not great, but the Jets are also in a playoff position. So you can't just say, well, our defense wasn't good enough, we didn't make the playoffs, and Connor McDavid killed us. You have to figure out a way, with the playoffs, 6 games away, you have to figure out a way and to try and neutralize him, because I haven't seen the Jets do anything different really in their approach in those 9 games against the Oilers. So that's why for game 1 of the playoffs, you better be rolling out a different strategy rather than just going head to head, Scheifele against McDavid, may the better man win. Well, the better man, by the way, his name is Connor McDavid. It's not Mark Scheifele.
And the only thing I was going to add, Drew, is if Montreal beats Ottawa tonight, then Montreal is 2 points back. So I wouldn't necessarily, I would write it in pencil, not pen, that the Jets are playing the Oilers in the first round, because Montreal would be 2 points back if they win tonight with the same number of games played as the Winnipeg Jets, with obviously the same number of games remaining in the season. So it wouldn't necessarily be a foregone conclusion.
Well, then just insert Austin Matthews for Connor McDavid then, Dave.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I would rather face Austin Matthews than Connor McDavid. I think Connor McDavid is, and to be honest with you, with the Toronto goaltending situation, the way Mike Smith is playing, I'm not so sure you wouldn't rather face whomever is in net in Toronto versus a rejuvenated Mike Smith and an Edmonton team that seems to be playing a little bit better hockey. So again, like, all I'm saying is I wouldn't necessarily write those pairs in stone. The Oilers, I think, I can't remember where they are in terms of points. They're at 60. So they're 3 ahead of the Jets with 2 games in hand. So the Oilers, the Oilers are most likely not going to catch Toronto, who have a 9-point lead on them. But again, I just don't think it's a foregone conclusion that the Jets are playing the Oilers at this point in the playoffs. Again, I'm of the opinion that the 4 teams are the Leafs, the Oilers, the Habs, and the Jets. I don't think Calgary is going to be able to do it because they've been too inconsistent. But I just think I wouldn't be so quick to suggest that it's going to be an Edmonton-Winnipeg series. And to be honest with you, I'm not so sure that's necessarily a bad thing based on the way that the Jets have seemed to have played better against the Leafs this season than against the Oilers. So, and again, with the Toronto goaltending situation not yet set, maybe there's something there. Plus, to be honest with you,
Dave, you're talking about the first place team in the division.
No,
but the Leafs have defeated the Jets more times than they've defeated the Leafs.
Well, yeah, but they've less times.
It hasn't been 7-2 like it was Edmonton.
That's
against.
right.
Well, still, it's not. Let's not get carried away here. The Jets have been great against Toronto.
It doesn't make a difference. I'm not suggesting the Jets are favorites. I'm saying they've played Toronto better than they've played Edmonton, and I think speak for everyone when I say, who doesn't want to see Nikolai Ehlers versus Joe Thornton in a playoff series? I think everybody wants to see that.
A valid point nonetheless there, Mr. Minuk. I mean, I keep going back to the defense now when you consider the Jets defense, and we've talked about it really throughout the show and the post-game show in the last number of weeks. Why not, if Dylan DeMello is your safety blanket and is your security blanket for the Jets on the back end, why not try Dylan DeMello with a Ville Heinola for a while, starting Monday in Ottawa, just to see what you have? Because Paul Maurice obviously he likes to play DeMello with, I'm going to say, the defenseman he has the least amount of confidence in. And that's why DeMello has been stuck in a third pairing role all season long.
I don't think it's necessarily just that, Drew. I think he's just been a third pairing defenseman, and it so happens that Logan Stanley is coming in for whoever was previously playing with DeMello, right? So you've seen DeMello on the top pair as well. I'm just saying that,
nobody believes that Tucker Poolman is a better defenseman than Dylan DeMello. I mean, I can't believe somebody believes that. That would be hard for me to imagine. That's why, I think Paul Maurice is trying to sort of say, look, he's got 3 or 4 defensemen he's got confidence in, and rather than playing those 4 all together, he's spreading them out a little bit among the entirety of his deep pairs, which is why, he's got confidence in Morrissey, so Morrissey gets Poolman. He's got confidence in DeMello, so DeMello gets Stanley or Ben or whomever.
But I'm just saying, I don't think that Paul Maurice doesn't have confidence or the least amount of confidence in Logan Stanley, because why would he have depended on him this much? All I'm saying is that, yes, if you're ranking Jets defensemen, everybody knows what the rankings are most likely going to be. Pionk, Morrissey, DeMello, and then I guess Forbort and Poolman are going to be 4 or 5 or 5, 6 or whatever. But nobody, again, we've talked about this so many times. I'm quite frankly getting sick of talking about Ville Heinola needs to come into the lineup, because it's obvious. It's so obvious. But the Jets have to be better defensively as a team. That's the takeaway here. So unless you see that, I don't think it matters who's on defense. I really don't. That's just my own opinion.
Well, you see, and I understand. I agree that
the first goal was just as much Kyle Connor's fault as it was Neil Pionk's fault.
Yeah,
I don't care what anybody says.
Absolutely, the defense needs to be better as a whole. But this sort of, when you're in the regular season, I can sort of understand why you spread out your defense a little bit thinner among the 3 pairs. When you come playoff time, I think you got to load up. I think you got to load up and take your 4 best defensemen, the 4 defensemen you have the most confidence in, and you play those guys. They are your horses. They are your guys who are playing 25 to 30 minutes a night, because it's playoff time. And that's certainly, when Duncan Keith was at his prime in Chicago, and I'm certainly not saying that any of the Jets defensemen are Duncan Keith, but when he was in his prime, when Drew Doughty was in his prime, when Chris Pronger before that, what was the common denominator? They played an absolute ton of minutes because it was playoff time. You weren't reining in your horses for any reason at that point in the season. So if you're the Jets coaching staff, if you're Paul Maurice, if you're Charlie Huddy, now is the time. The next 5 or 6 games is the time to determine who your 4 horses are on your defense and load up those pairings, because you're going to need them to play huge minutes come playoff time. You can't spread it out like he's been doing all season long. And I think it's been good that he was doing that in the regular season. But now, with the struggles the team is facing, Dave, and with the playoffs 6 games away, you have to identify those players and say, I'm riding with you. You guys are my ride or die. And if we end up dying, so be it. At least I didn't keep you in the barn waiting for playoff games that never materialized.
Like those horse analogies right there.
Well, it is very fitting, again, with it being Derby Day. Dave, chime in on my comment there if you think I'm out to lunch, or, I certainly won't be insulted, because more than one person has told me that.
Well, it is. We're approaching lunchtime in an hour, so I mean that's I don't want Ezzy raiding my kitchen, so let's not give him any ideas. But I think,
how much food do you have in that kitchen? You're not a guy who seems to cook very much. So how much food's in there?
Dave is pretty stocked up.
I've got some snacks.
So like snacks.
As he does like snacks. Thankfully, he usually stops and gets some before he comes. So that's usually, I don't have to worry about seeing a little trail of food from the kitchen to Ezzy's spot. But there's usually just food under the table, which I clean up after Ez, but it's all good. Look, I think Drew, the point is that we talked about it. Don't burn out your guys in the regular season. Get that evenness, because you didn't want what were we seeing that first week? Mark Scheifele was playing like 26 minutes, and it didn't make any sense. You don't need these guys playing significant minutes in that regard, because you're going to blow them out, especially in a condensed schedule, earlier than you need to. But now it's the playoffs, and you got to ride your best. And this is when you're going to have to be able to rely on it. And, if a guy has to play, if a Josh Morrissey has to play 27 minutes, then Josh Morrissey has to play 27 minutes. If Dylan DeMello has to play 27 minutes, then Dylan DeMello. Again, those are the guys that you trust. Those are the guys that you have faith in. And look, you're right. The Jets don't have a Chris Pronger. The Jets don't have a Duncan Keith. They don't have that kind of defenseman who you're going to say can go out there and play, 35 minutes in the game, and you're going to have that confidence that he's going to be just as good in minute 1 as he is in minute 35. It's not. It's more of a committee thing with his Jets team. But the reality is, look, Neil Pionk has stepped up his game big time. And what you have is an opportunity, and this is what I think is so critical in these final 6 games, because what you've got. Like, it's not like you're like, oh, well, I got to figure out what I have with Josh Morrissey. Well, you know what you've got with him. What you have with Neil Pionk. You know what you have with Jordy Ben. I mean, I know you want to see it, quote, but I mean, seeing it on the left side doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, but you know what you have in him. So to me, it's an opportunity here to, quote, fine-tune your team, get them rolling a little bit, but also give those guys that opportunity. Like I said, the Ville Heinolas, give the Logan Stanleys, get them in there. Let that rotation roll a little bit, and maybe give Derek Forbort a night off. Derek Forbort had a terrible game last game. So, again, nobody should have a guaranteed spot. If you don't play well, then your spot is not. Again, it gives people, that leads to complacency. If I don't have to think, hey, my job is on the line, if I don't have a good game, again, you don't want guys to play tight and scared hockey. But right now, there's a complacency because it seems like the only guy who has to worry about, quote, leaving the rotation, and even that isn't so significant, is Jordy Ben. Well, if other guys have that worry that, hey, you know what, I'm not a guarantee. There's a young guy who's champing at the bit, another horse racing thought, to get into the lineup. Well, guess what? Maybe they play a little bit cleaner. Maybe they play a little bit better. Or here's a crazy notion. Maybe that rest on a guy like Derek Forbort, who dealt with injuries all of last season, maybe that does his body some good and he comes in fresh. That's all I'm saying. That to me was the whole thought process of the taxi squad. And I get that these guys are the highest level alpha competitors and they want to play every game. But sometimes you have to be the voice of reason in the room and the guy who makes the decision for them. You're the coach. The buck stops with you. Ultimately, their play, they don't determine who plays when, you do. So if you think that they need to peel back and stop, give some fresh legs in, then it's too bad if they don't like it. Then play better. But don't have a game like they did. I think Forbort was on for 4 of the goals against. I'm not blaming him for all of them, but it's not a good sign when you're on for 4 goals against.
And Dave, that's why Ville Heinola should not only play on Monday night, Heinola should be playing for the rest of these 6 games, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
No question. I mean, just to put him with Dylan DeMello for the next half a dozen games and see what you got. And maybe all of a sudden your top 4 come playoff time is Pionk and Morrissey and DeMello and Heinola.
I agree with you 100%. That's exactly what you should be doing.
That way, because we know Paul Maurice has confidence in Morrissey and Pionk, despite Morrissey's struggles, and we know that Pionk has been very good since the Jets acquired him from New York in the Trouba trade, and you know that DeMello provides Maurice with a level of comfort. So put him with Heinola and see. DeMello's not going to be offensive, and we know that, and that's fine. So Heinola can be comfortable knowing that he's got a very defensively responsible D partner. And then whatever your third pairing is, be it Ben and Poolman, be it Ben and Stastny, whatever combination, Stastny and Poolman, whatever combination. Stanley. What was I saying? Stastny. I meant Stanley, yes.
Paul Stastny is a very versatile player, and he's a smart veteran. But I don't think defense is going to be added to his repertoire.
No, that would be thinking outside the box, certainly at this point in time. Go with 2 of those 3 players for your third line, and all of a sudden you can play your top 4. For more than just 18 to 20 minutes a game. Those guys can really eat up your minutes. And Heinola will feel comfortable knowing he's got a very defensively responsible partner in Dylan DeMello with him. And Maurice will be comfortable in playing Heinola because he has DeMello with him. To me, that's what you have to do for the next 5 games, 6 games. And all of a sudden, I didn't even mention Derek Forbort in there. So Forbort's also an option to be playing on that third pairing. And so maybe your third pairing is Forbort and Ben, because we know how Paul Maurice feels about veterans, or Forbort and Poolman. Whatever it might be, you have to get Heinola into this lineup. Playing him in a third line role with Poolman doesn't solve you anything. Put him with another talented player and see if all of a sudden you have found money that changes your defense and changes your team leading into the playoffs against the Toronto Maple Leafs or the Edmonton Oilers or whomever the Jets end up facing in the first round.
Yeah,
Hold that thought. I want to take a break. We're going to come back with Daniel Fink, Manitoba Moose broadcaster.
Positivity finally, a little Moose talk.
Talk about the Moose winner. They've got points in their last 8 games. They finished a 17-game homestand. They're playing some great hockey. We'll talk about the Manitoba Moose from now, probably through the end of the program. That's up next. You're listening, you're watching, you're chatting with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We are live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
While you can't always count on your team winning, nor your favorite player scoring, one thing you can always count on is Bernstein's Deli. They've expanded their services because the team at Bernstein's Deli wants to accommodate your needs and keep you safe. Open Tuesday to Saturday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. to serve you. Head to your phone, in-store or online to shop for groceries or order meals from the restaurant, like the legendary Illegal Curve sandwich. Just go to bernsteinsdeli.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Hour number 3 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now. We're live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms. I'm your host, Drew Mindell. I'm joined by Dave Minuk. I'm joined by Ezra Ginsburg, about to be joined momentarily. Oh, here he is. Let's bring him right into the program. Manitoba Moose broadcaster Daniel Fink joins us. Looks like he's live at the Iceplex, if I'm not mistaken. I assume the Moose are on the ice right now. Is that correct, Mr. Fink?
Right from Moose practice, gentlemen. A live look inside.
There you go. That is a can't ask for better access than that.
Dan, can you tell the boys no slap shots on the boards just for all the time that you're on with us?
Well, I mean, the glass that's in there, it's not half as loud, I don't think, because they usually have the tempered glass in, but with the move, they had to bring in the pro glass and the acrylic, so it's actually tried to change down a lot more.
There you go. Obviously, Dan, we brought you on to talk about the Moose. They finished their 17-game homestand, which is just saying it sounds ridiculous, but nonetheless, this is a team playing some very good hockey as of late. They have points in 8 straight games. I guess what can you tell our audience? What's the biggest takeaway you can tell our audience about the Manitoba Moose play as of late?
Well, I guess the biggest thing is it hasn't changed all season. I mean, they're the same team whenever they hit the ice. No matter who's in the lineup, they play the same way every single night. I don't know if I've seen a team as consistent as this in a long time. I mean, they just go out, they work a little more, and they have a great time doing it. So when they get that little bit of extra infusion of skill from the Winnipeg Jets taxi squad, that goes a long way too. But when you look at this 8-game point streak, they've had those guys, they haven't had those guys, and it just stays consistent. And it's been a lot of fun to watch. It's been a lot of fun to be a part of. It's one of those seasons that I really wish I'd been in the room the whole season because it's such a great group of guys. And I know we say that every year, but yeah, this group is something else. And you know what, they've been rewarded.
Dan, I was joking with you earlier, but I have to say, I absolutely love the fact that there's hockey and we can hear sticks and pucks on the ice. It makes me want to, put the tacks on and get out there and, show these guys how horrible I am on the ice. But, we have to talk about last Saturday and, Errol Comrie becoming the all-time franchise leader in wins with 85. Passing Corey Schneider, who we obviously know was so good, around 2008, 2009, 2010 when he was a member of the Moose. But just how great of a story is it, considering that Comrie was claimed off of waivers, He's been on a bunch of different franchises, and it just seemed right the way it happened, the shutout, and it just was such a feel good story, for Comrie and everything that he's been through over the last couple years.
I don't think we have enough time for me to go through it. I realize I'm the last guest of the show, but I could probably talk for the next 2 hours on just the road to get here. I mean, for Comrie, it goes all the way back to last season, right, guys? He gets claimed off of waivers. That was a shocker. I remember that day very clearly. Just all of a sudden seeing, I think it was Elliot Friedman who had it up first and went, uh-oh. Of course, the Moose still had Mikhail Burden, but all of a sudden your probably best goalie tandem in the American Hockey League gets cut in half, and one of the leaders in the dressing room is just gone all of a sudden. So obviously it went through quite the odyssey for him to eventually return after Christmas. And even then, he played, I think it was 16 games, had actually one of the best stretches of his career for the Moose. Lost, I think, 3 or 4 games, 1-0 in the last half of that season. He was playing lights out for the Moose. You know what? It was looking like, okay, he's gets an 83 on March 7th, and you're thinking, okay, he's going to tie this up and surpass Corey Schneider by the end of the season. Well, we all know what happened about 4 or 5 days later, and here we are a year and a bit later, and then the taxi squad's a factor. Are we ever going to see Eric Comrie get in for another game after he ties the record? Well, finally that happens. He ends up getting in for 3 more, plays excellent, gets the record. And, even just for guys like Nelson Nogier to be there, he was on the taxi squad all season with Eric. He's been with Eric for all of Nogier's career and most of Comrie's. And there was just so many great storylines to come out with it. And then, like you said, to get it done in a shutout effort, that just was the icing on the cake. And he's just such a great guy and such an important part of this team. He really has been arguably the face of the Moose franchise since the team came back to Manitoba, and for him to get that record, it's so well deserved, because you think about kind of the early seasons with the Moose back in Winnipeg, and as well as Eric played. Just the prospects weren't quite there yet, and the Moose were really, really young and struggled a little bit. So, in theory, in some ways, you'd think that maybe he would have gotten this done a little earlier had he been on maybe some more better teams, we'll just say. But you know what? For him to get there, it's huge, and it couldn't happen to a better guy.
Daniel Fink is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Daniel is, of course, the Manitoba Moose play-by-play broadcaster. The Moose practicing, as you can see behind Dan there. And Dan, if you ever hear us just scream incoming, that means a puck is being rifled at your head as quickly as humanly possible. So just get down if that happens.
I got that netting back there. I heard plenty of complaints about that throughout the season for the AHL broadcasts, but that's why it's there. So.
Dan, and speaking of the AHL, what a testament to this group of guys, this Manitoba Moose team, knowing for the most part that it was expected there weren't going to be a playoffs. That word came down from the AHL officially this week. But, and I've talked to Pascal Vincent and I've talked to you. It's just what a testament to these guys that they're still going out, and you can't tell there aren't going to be a playoffs. Like, this team competes every single minute of every single game as if they are going to the playoffs. And it's such a testament to guys who don't necessarily even know that they're going to get called up to be a black ace for the Jets. When the playoffs come around in the NHL. What do you like? What have you? And again, you see an insight to these guys that most people don't. But what can you say? What can you speak to this group about that sort of impact? How they care about each other the way they've done it so far this year.
I thought it was really cool after the last game. Yona Lowoto was one of the guys they brought up for media, and I'm not sure if it was you, Dave, who asked him kind of a similar question, but he was almost speechless. He didn't know how to put it into words in some ways. He said, we're just having so much fun. Pascal Vincent, anytime you ask him about this team, he just says, we have a lot of fun. And they're out there, they're playing for each other. They're a great group of guys. And when you have that kind of room, when you're that tight, you're going to find success because you don't need that extra little bit of a carrot to get to the playoffs and continue on. I mean, it's a little bit different sometimes in the American Hockey League. You don't really have a lot of guys on long-term contracts. Everybody has some sort of motivation, whether that's to catch the eyes of the Winnipeg Jets management to say, you know what, I'm here, I want to be on the Jets next season. Or there's a lot of guys on one-year contracts that have to earn their job for next season. So there's always, no matter what, that type of motivation towards the end of the season, regardless if you're heading to the playoffs or not. And then you add in just the added element that these guys just show up, they go to work, they have a blast doing it, and and you see the results on the ice. And I maybe look at 1 or 2 games over the last 20 plus where they haven't brought their best and played to whatever they could do that night. I mean, you're going to have nights where the puck just doesn't go in for you, but you know what? They just go out and they don't let it discourage them. If it doesn't go right one night, they come right back and they do it all over again.
Daniel Fink, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, talking about the Manitoba Moose, practicing behind Daniel. The Moose heading out on the road after finishing a 17-game homestand. Dan, I look at this Moose team, I look at the leading scorers, and of course Cole Perfetti is certainly right up there, and we'll talk about Perfetti during this interview, but Nathan Todd and Jeff Mallett, just 2 great stories, 2 guys who are undrafted, who've sort of worked their way up through the professional hockey ranks. You know, what's so special? Like, you know, the impact that both Nathan and Jeff have had on the Manitoba Moose team this year.
Yeah, I mean, anybody would have been forgiven for seeing those signings in the offseason and saying, okay, Nathan Todd, he played close to 20 games in the AHL, had 1 goal. There's a guy that's going to be a depth signing. You saw him a lot. You know what he is. And then Jeff Mallett, he comes out of Cornell. He's got 6 goals in each of the last 4 seasons. Okay, another depth guy. Then they show up, and all of a sudden, they just don't stop scoring. I mean, Mallett has been ridiculously consistent throughout the year. I mean, I think he's gone at most 3 or 4 games without scoring a goal, leads the team in goals. He's tied for the AHL rookie lead in goals as well. So a guy, again, who scored 6 goals each of the last 4 seasons in college, all of a sudden has 12 goals in his first season of pro hockey. And Nathan Todd, man, he just hit a different gear. You could see it from the moment camp started. He picked up a step. He looked a lot faster. He was harder into the play. And as a result, we've seen that he just attacks on the forecheck. He's stolen the puck from goaltenders 3 or 4 times this season, twice turning it into goals, just getting on the forecheck and getting it quick. And then because he's been able to add that step and play the game at a higher pace, that natural skill that he has is going through a lot more. And it doesn't hurt that both of these guys got a lot more opportunity because of just how things were this season. And there's some of these guys that, through no fault of their own, might not have gotten quite the same look because you had to play with Christian Vesalainens and with David Gustafsons, and the Jets prospects needed their space, and maybe they're playing on the 3rd or 4th line and don't get as much ice time, and it doesn't click for them. Well, they got the opportunity to play top 6 minutes, and they haven't really relinquished it because they've been sitting on the top line, whether it's been Steve season, David Gustafson in between them the rest of the season. Even Todd went about 8 or 9 games without recording a point, but he's still a very effective player for the Moose during that span. And he had such an early lead that he's still atop the leaderboard, and then gets back hot again and, well, puts up back-to-back 3 assist games and gets rolling. So and these guys, they're just the quintessential example of what can go right in the American Hockey League for guys that get that opportunity, they run with it, and now the sky's the limit for these guys. It'd be really interesting to see where they land next year.
Dan, speaking of sky's the limit, Drew mentioned Cole Perfetti, and he's obviously one of the great young players on the Moose that you know, Jets fans, you know, want to talk about. And, you know, we know he's been putting up great numbers and scoring key goals and factoring in on big goals. What stands out to you? Because, you know, you're getting a front row to call Perfetti, who, you know, everyone expects to have a really, you know, long career in the NHL. So what has stood out to you about Perfetti? Like, is it I imagine it's the skill, but like, what has it been? Because I imagine, you know, before the season started, you were expecting him to be this skilled and this talented.
Honestly, probably one of the biggest things that stands out to me is that he's probably a better speaker than any of us, and should probably be hosting this rather than being talked about on it. No, aside from being an absolutely elite interview, it's been a lot of fun to watch the development, because you're not sure when a kid comes in, he's 19, January 1st birthday, so as opposed to some of his counterparts, actually 19 once they got going. And you're just not sure. And you get a young guy in, he's obviously not the biggest guy. How's he going to deal with playing a whole bunch of guys that are larger, the speed of the game? And that was one of the first things he mentioned, even leading up to his first game, said it's a lot faster out here, even in practice. So he's like, okay, buckle up, kid, because it's going to get faster. And you know what? He was an effective player for the Moose. He kind of played around the lineup, did his thing. Some nights you wouldn't really notice him too much, and then you get on the power play, you go, okay, there's Perfetti. And really, for the first half of the season, almost all of his points came on the man advantage, and you could really see what he could do with that open ice. And when things maybe slowed down a little bit, just how he could find guys. He could move pucks to the state. He finds those passing lanes that we don't even see when we're sitting way up in Dell MTS Place. It would be really easy for us to see those passing lanes. And then a deal happened. And he didn't have a point in his first game of the month. And then he racked up a point in 7 straight games. Finally had that point streak in the last game that the Moose played, the last game of the month. He put up 13 points in the month, led the team in scoring, tied for the American Hockey League rookie lead in scoring. He had 10 points coming into the month. So you see just how big that jump was in the month. And you notice that. Every time he's on the ice, he looks dangerous. Maybe there's a privilege that the consistency is there. Because early in the season, you kind of see him. You know, the game was on the line. You can tell when there's big game players because they hit a different level. Well, the next stage of development is finding that consistency. Well, we're seeing that consistency now. So, and obviously one of the tough things for young players to play now is stretching that consistency over 5 games and 10 games and 20 games and 30 games in a whole season. So it's been a lot of fun to watch that progression. And, you know, it's been a lot of fun to see some of the great goals that he's been able to put behind netminders and some of the great setups he's had as well. So it's been a lot of fun to watch him, and you know what? It's I don't know what the future holds for next season, but and going forward, of course. But it's been a privilege to watch that young man do his thing in the NHL this season.
Daniel Fink is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. He's live at Moose practices. You can definitely hear in the background the pings and the glasses smashing with the pucks hitting off of it. It's nice to hear sort of the background noise of a hockey game live during an interview. Daniel, of course, is the Manitoba Moose play-by-play broadcaster.
Great.
I hope it's not too loud, guys.
No, it's good. It's good. And people are going to be like, it's authentic, Dan. That's the key. And that's what we're bringing the people. They're getting the authentic, what's happening at a Moose practice. So that's not a bad thing.
And it's so nice, Dave and Dan, that the Moose, you know, they weren't originally going to practice, but they knew you were coming on, and they just decided to practice and give us some background noise. I love it.
So this is where I hit the button reveal. It's all green screen and the speakers just sitting off to my lap.
But you know, like, again, this is kind of nice because fans haven't had access to be in a practice live all season long. So we're actually, because it's courtesy of you, are bringing them into that. So it's kind of a nice,
some exclusive illegal content right there.
This is something big. So, you know, Dan, one player we have to talk about because he's just been so good for the Manitoba Moose is 2017 Jets third rounder Johnny Kovacevic. Such a high, intelligent kid and such a smart young man. Off the ice, speaking of guys who are intelligent, can hold their own in an interview. That's a perfect description of Johnny Kovacevic. But on the ice, he has just been he's a right shot, 6'5", 220-pound plus defenseman. That sounds like something the Jets could use. Not necessarily right now. I'm not rushing him. I'm risk adverse in that regard. But, you know, talk about how good his game is. You know, a 38-minute game. I think he's 2 goals, 7 assists in his last 9 games. This guy has just. He's been leaned on by the coaching staff of this Manitoba Moose organization, and he's just he's thriving right now under all that responsibility, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, Dave, you've been on the Johnny Kovacevic hype train with me for the last little while, so this is my time to go here. We're gonna talk out the rest of the show about Kovacevic because I think there's a lot of people maybe sleeping on this guy that should wake up a little because his season's been remarkable, really. I mean, he's a solid player for the Moose last season. I mean, he came in and was a very strong option on the back end. He has such a great zone of control because he moves reasonably well. He's got that long reach. He's good with his stick. His gap control is fantastic. But into this season, maybe a bit of a slower start for him than he would have liked. But man, when the month changed, I guess it was right around game 10 of the season where he started to really get rolling, and then get into March and April, and he was really, like you said, leaned on by the Moose. He's become a leader for this team. It's just his second season in the American Hockey League, but for a couple of weeks, he was the most experienced player the Moose had on their blue line due to injury. So, you know, they really looked to him, and we were talking earlier about Todd and Malott stepping up when opportunity was presented. Well, there was a very large opportunity for Johnny Kovacevic to step into, and he did exactly that. You mentioned the 38-minute game when he led the way to a Moose win, despite the team having only 5 defensemen in the lineup that night. He was absolutely dominant, and you're starting to see that anytime the play comes into his side of the ice, it just ends, and then it's going back the other way. one of the things that I think is underrated about a lot of players, and the more you watch, the more you see how valuable a guy that can just clear the zone is. I mean, especially on the penalty kill. When you get into trouble on your own end on the PK, obviously bad things happen. But when the puck gets on to Johnny 27's stick on the PK, it's down the ice. And I notice it when it doesn't get down the ice because it's so rare. And it seems like a small thing to mention, but it's so important. And now what he's really done this season, and we were talking to Eric Dubois about this earlier on in the month, is he worked on his passing in the offseason. Long offseason to get that work in. And you know what? He's firing pucks from his own zone. His first pass is crisp. It's on the tape. It's hard. And now he's using his feet a little bit more. He's got that extra little bit of confidence. And we saw him set up a goal for Bobby Lynch in the last game, and he made a little stutter step at the blue line, cut over to the right side, then fed Christian Reichel right in the slot with a perfect pass to start the play. And when that confidence gets going for a guy, it's so important, especially when they're developing. And now we're seeing him really push the pace, and he's been a lot of fun to watch over the last run of games. And he's just been so important for the Moose back end.
Last question for you, Dan. Dan Fink, Manitoba Moose broadcaster, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Another defenseman who's really sort of stepping up and making an impact in his first year as a professional. Declan Chisholm. What has been the best attributes of his game as he makes the transition from Peterborough Pete to a Manitoba Moose defenseman?
It's always interesting to see where a prolific defenseman comes from in junior, whether they're going to be able to translate that offense to the AHL or pro hockey in general. And sometimes it takes guys a little while. For Declan Chisholm, his first game, he scored his first goal. So you look at what he's done throughout the season. He leads the Moose defense in scoring, though now Kovacevic is right hot on his heels, and he moves his feet so well. And that's going to be his best asset probably throughout his professional career. And he thinks the game really well. So while he's not the biggest guy, he's not going to be running guys off pucks like a Dylan Samberg or a Johnny Kovacevic. He's got to get around them. He's got to slip into those spots, lift the stick, hold the puck away, and that's what he does really well. I'm constantly impressed by how well he does that despite not having that extra little bit of size. And he'll get right in there. He's not going to shy away from the play either. And, of course, his offensive acumen is impressive. It's not too often that rookies get to spend time on the first unit power play, but that's the opportunity they've had this season. It's kind of been the buzzword of this interview, guys, and opportunity and guys running with it. So he's taken that opportunity. He's made good on it, and he's had a pretty solid rookie season.
Daniel Fink is the Manitoba Moose broadcaster. The Moose finished a 17-game homestand. They've got points in 8 straight games. They head out on the road for the remainder of the season. Dan, appreciate your time. Appreciate your insight. Appreciate you not getting pegged off with a puck in the back of the head as well. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for the time. I'm going to slip in a couple of shameless plugs here. The Moose are going to be on the road for 7 straight. You can catch all those games on cjob.com/sports or moosehockey.com/listenlive. And, of course, ahltv.com. And we're talking about what a great guy Eric Comrie is. I've got a very large ode to Eric Comrie coming out from the American Hockey League. Probably around May 5th, I think that'll hit. So it's going to be a good, big, long read. I had a chance to talk to a lot of people, including former teammates and people throughout the organization. So really excited for that to hit the web as well. So, again, thanks, guys, for having me on.
Awesome work, Dan. Cheers.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Daniel.
There he goes, Dan Fink, joining us on the show, Manitoba Moose broadcast.
Now that's authentic. You're not going to get that.
I was going to say, I think we should have more, beat writers and broadcasters, coming to us with that type of
I think Paulie's got to step
sound.
Up his
that
game.
Was awesome. Yeah,
Paulie's got Paulie. Paulie, we don't want you in an office in your house. We need you at the rink.
Yeah. We want pucks hitting the glass.
Yeah, anybody can do an interview from their house. Yeah, that's not
true,
exciting.
though, right? I mean, if you think about it, that's a view that fans have had the opportunity to go to the Iceplex, watch the Jets practice, watch the Moose practice, and now even if you go to the Iceplex, if you're playing, there's a big curtain that kind of blocks off the Moose section from everyone else. So it's a view that few are afforded. Yet when you come on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show to watch the three of us bozos talk to Dan, then you get that opportunity to watch something you haven't watched all season, which is the Moose practicing, firing pucks at the net, and a pretty good Moose team that seems to be firing on all cylinders right now.
Bozos is the best way to put us. Let's wrap up this episode of Bozos talking about what to expect for Monday night for the Winnipeg Jets. You know,
sorry, I was thinking of the episode of Seinfeld when the clown hasn't heard of Bozo. You guys know which one?
Yes,
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, where George is
I'm pretty sure isn't that the same episode where he eats something out of the garbage? Which, for the record, is something I could see Ezzy doing right now in my house.
Well, maybe more so in my 20s when I was a little bit desperate, but.
It's actually not the same episode, Dave. That's a little embarrassing. I'm a little embarrassed for you. It's not the same episode. I believe the Bozo the Clown episode is where the apartment's on fire.
The apartment's on fire.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And George knocks over the children to get out the door before the children do.
I think he still eats the. I think he eats the dainty. No. Isn't that where he takes the dainty out of the garbage?
Different episode, because I believe I believe in that episode isn't she having a tea? Isn't he at his girlfriend's house and she's having a tea or something? And the mother-in-law or the potential mother-in-law walks in and sees him eating out of the garbage.
Yeah, you're right. Damn it.
Thank you.
I hate to admit you're right. Especially
I know Seinfeld was the show about nothing, but
yeah, this is a show about nothing. Dear mama.
Alrighty, so what do you want to see from the Jets entering Monday night's game against the Ottawa Senators? Lineup changes, I think, are. Well, they have to be assured, because if they're not, if it's the same lineup on Monday, I think people will be apoplectic at the very least. I think that's the most polite way of putting it. And this is a team that's obviously in desperate need of some changes. You know, they just need some changes.
Yeah, absolutely, Drew. We talked about this earlier in the show. I agree with you. Like, I think Logan Stanley or Ville Heinola goes in for Jordy Ben, or maybe we see both of these guys go in, and then maybe, you see a Tucker Pullman or a Derek Forbort come into the lineup. We'll wait and see. But I would be shocked, put it that way, if we don't see any changes. The big one as well, guys, we talked about it earlier. Adam Lowry might play on Monday night. And if he doesn't play on Monday, he probably will play against Calgary. So that's obviously a big change. But we're not going to throw any more cliches out here, full 60 minutes, everything like that. I mean, the Jets have to leave it out on the ice. I remember Dave said this, going into the last game of the homestand against Edmonton. He said, after 4 losses in a row, you have to leave it out there. You have to leave it all out there, I should say, against Edmonton. And they did play well coming off of that 6-1 loss. They didn't win the game, but it was a much better effort. And I think that's what you need to see Monday night against Ottawa. You have to end this losing streak. You have to do whatever it takes. Every guy on this Jets team should feel the desperation and the urgency in their game. So that's what I want to see. I want to see one of the best efforts that we've seen from this Jets team all season long.
Dave, final thought to you on the Winnipeg Jets entering Monday, trying to eliminate the 6-game losing streak.
Well, I mean, look, and as he just touched on the lineup changes that you're expecting to see, and I think you just need to see a team that took advantage of today's day off. You got away from the rink, you had an opportunity to kind of hit that reset button, get out that vitamin D, and just be out in the sun. I don't know what the weather's like in Ottawa right now, but let's go on the premise that it's. I was talking to my niece who lives there. I think it was a little rainy actually the other day, but maybe they're away from the rink. They're not thinking about hockey right now. And tomorrow you have to have a good practice. You have to be engaged. I mean, and that to me is the key. If you play a game, that Edmonton game was a much better game, right? You lost because you gave up 2 power play goals and an empty net goal. So your 5-on-5 was relatively decent. And then you don't follow that up against obviously the Montreal team that dominated you in pretty much all aspects of the game. So if you're going to flip it around, again, one game isn't going to relieve all the pressure, but it could go a long way to allowing you to, open up the valve and allow a little of that pressure out, because you're not out of the woods. A win doesn't suddenly say, okay, fine, we got it back. The Jets have their groove back. It's not that easy for this team, because what you've done over the last few weeks you have to have a long list of accomplishments in order to kind of get away from that. But you can start on that path forward by doing what we're talking about, which is having a more Edmonton-like effort than a Montreal effort. And again, Adam Lowry, I think, will go a long way when he is inserted. Again, Paul Maurice tipped his hand a little bit, talking about how he expects him to be back. And I just think you just need to see that collective buy-in again with the new faces in the lineup and the effort. Minimize your penalties, be a little quicker on a little crispier with your passing. You take advantage of what you have, which is an opportunity with a day off today and a good practice on Sunday to be ready on Monday to go. And then again, finish this off. You got to have a good effort against Calgary. Again, I'm not looking past Ottawa because I think it's critical they play well in Ottawa. but you got to play well against Calgary as well. Like, you have to turn it around, and it's not on one player. Like, again, we've talked about it. You asked which player is going to be most responsible maybe for getting this going again, but this is a total team effort. This is Connor Hellebuyck. This is Mark Scheifele, Blake Wheeler, all the way down to the Jansen Harkins, the Nate Thompsons, the Trevor Lewises, who we think are doing their part. But this is going to be a total team effort, not just one guy turning it around for this Winnipeg Jets club.
And on that note, we thank everybody for joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Want to pay tribute to our sponsors, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Linden Market Dental Center, Bernstein's Deli, Zappia Group Realty, and Boston Pizza. Support these fine local businesses because they support Illegal Curve Hockey. Reminder, Monday night, right around 8:30 or so, that'll be when the post-game show starts. The Jets, obviously, and the Senators. The Jets trying to finish off and end their 6-game losing streak, get back on the winning side of the ledger. Then again, Wednesday night with the post-game show. That one will be a little bit later, right around probably 11 o'clock at night on Wednesday, as the Jets are into Calgary for a later start time. Dave Minuk has his head on fire. Ezra Ginsburg might not have a beard or shouldn't have a beard come Monday night.
Smash that subscribe button.
Smash the subscribe button.
And by the way, tell everybody to go enjoy. It's going to be a gorgeous day in Manitoba, plus 22 in Winnipeg. I expect the rest of the province will be beautiful. So hopefully you enjoy a nice, you too get some vitamin D and enjoy this beautiful Saturday in Winnipeg.
Exactly right. I'm off to head to the park and catch up with my family after they've bailed out on me a couple hours ago. So I'm off to do that. I hope everybody enjoys their Saturday. And a reminder, Monday night, we'll see you for the post-game show. But until then, we thank you for watching the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. And we remind you, if it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.